What if the air around you became so hot, so saturated with moisture, that your own body could no longer cool itself? Not because you're dehydrated, not because you're exhausted, but because the laws of physics themselves have turned against you. Your sweat, your biological cooling system perfected over millennia, simply stops working. This isn't a scene from a science fiction movie. This is the frightening reality dawning on the glittering metropolis of Dubai, where summer temperatures are now pushing the absolute limits of human survival. The city of the future is facing a problem as old as time, the unforgiving, scorching sun. And the question is no longer just how hot it can get, but what happens when it gets too hot for human life itself. The images you see of Dubai are of staggering ambition and impossible architecture. But behind the glass and steel lies a battle against nature that is intensifying every single year. So how is this city, a symbol of human ingenuity, surviving on the brink of an uninhabitable climate? What are they not showing you? Before we pull back the curtain on this extreme survival, let us know in the comments what is the highest temperature you have ever personally experienced. A massive number of people who watch our documentaries enjoy them but completely forget to subscribe. And honestly, it's a huge problem for us. It means our work doesn't get shown to new people. If you find yourself learning something new in the next few minutes, please take just 1 second to hit that subscribe button. It's a tiny click for you, but it's the single most important thing you can do to ensure we can keep making these stories for you. It's an emergency for our channel. We need your help. Thank you. Now, let's begin. Dubai's climate has always been extreme. It's officially classified as a hot desert climate, which is an understatement. For centuries, the region was sparsely populated, home to nomadic tribes who understood how to live in harmony with the harsh environment. They moved with the seasons, they sought shade and water, and they respected the power of the desert. But over the last 50 years, that ancient landscape has been completely terraformed. A city of over 3 million people has risen from the sand, a sprawling oasis of concrete, asphalt, and glass. This very act of creation, however, has inadvertently forged a new, more intense environment, the urban heat island effect on an unprecedented scale. Materials like asphalt and concrete absorb vastly more solar radiation than natural sand or vegetation. During the day, the city soaks up the sun's energy like a massive black rock. Then, at night, it slowly radiates that heat back into the atmosphere. The result is that the center of Dubai can be several degrees warmer than the surrounding undeveloped desert. The futuristic skyscrapers, while providing shade at their bases, create urban canyons that trap hot air, preventing it from escaping. Their glass facades, designed to offer breathtaking views, act like mirrors reflecting sunlight and concentrating heat onto the streets and buildings below. This phenomenon, combined with the city's natural coastal location, creates a stifling recipe for disaster. The Persian Gulf exhales a thick, humid air, especially in the late summer months. When this moisture combines with the city's amplified heat, it produces something far more dangerous than just a high number on a thermometer. The official record high in Dubai is a blistering 52.1 degrees Celsius, or 125.8 degrees Fahrenheit. But it's the feels-like temperature that tells the true story. When the air temperature hits 46 degrees Celsius, or about 115 Fahrenheit, and the humidity reaches 50%, the heat index, what it actually feels like on your skin, can surge to a shocking 65 degrees Celsius, or 149 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a level of heat that is difficult for the human mind to even process. At these temperatures, the air is not just hot, it feels heavy, suffocating, and relentlessly oppressive. It's a physical force. The world is getting hotter, but the United Arab Emirates is warming at an alarming rate, approximately 1.5 degrees Celsius since 1960, which is significantly faster than the global average. Projections from the World Bank's Climate Knowledge portal are grim. In the recent past, the UAE averaged about 95 days a year with temperatures soaring over 40 degrees Celsius. By 2050, that number is projected to jump to 157 days. That's more than 5 months of the year spent in what is considered extreme heat. We are quickly approaching new territory, a climate state that scientists from the Max Planck Institute have warned is unseen in human history. This leads us to a crucial, terrifying scientific concept, the wet bulb temperature. It's one thing to know the temperature, but it's another to understand how it affects our biology. The wet bulb temperature, or WBT, is a measurement that combines ambient heat with humidity. It essentially measures the lowest temperature that can be reached through evaporative cooling. This is critical because that's exactly how our bodies work. We sweat, the sweat evaporates, and that process cools our skin. But there's a catch. As the humidity in the air increases, it becomes harder for sweat to evaporate. If the air is already saturated with water vapor, your sweat has nowhere to go. It just drips off, providing no cooling effect at all. This brings us to the hard thermodynamic limit of human survivability. El-Fatih El-Tahir, a professor of hydrology and climate at MIT, has stated it plainly. When the wet bulb temperature exceeds 35 degrees Celsius, or 95 degrees Fahrenheit, the human body can no longer cool itself by perspiring. It doesn't matter how much water you drink, how healthy you are, or how much you rest in the shade. If you are exposed to a WBT of 35 degrees for several hours, your core body temperature will continue to rise, leading to organ failure and death. This is not a theory. It is a physical certainty. For years, this was considered a distant future threat. But it's not. In recent years, weather stations in the Persian Gulf region have already for brief periods recorded wet bulb temperatures cresting that deadly 35-degree threshold. The line has already been crossed. What does it feel like when your body is losing this battle? First comes heat exhaustion, dizziness, nausea, a pounding headache. Your body is screaming for relief. If you can't get to a cool place, it quickly progresses to heat stroke. Your internal temperature regulation system fails completely. You might stop sweating altogether. Your skin becomes hot and dry. Confusion and delirium set in, followed by seizures, coma, and ultimately death. This isn't just a risk for the elderly or the sick. It's a threat to anyone who spends too much time outdoors when conditions are this extreme. Imagine a city where, for days or even weeks on end, simply being outside without artificial assistance could be a death sentence. This is the future that climate models, like one from a 2021 MIT study, predict for Gulf cities like Dubai by the end of the century if greenhouse gas emissions continue on their current trajectory. Deadly heat waves, the study warns, could become a regular part of every summer. We're about 3 minutes in, and the sheer scale of this challenge is mind-boggling. I'm curious to hear your thoughts again. Based on what you've learned so far, do you think technology can truly solve a problem of this magnitude? Or are we witnessing the limits of human engineering? Drop your opinion in the comments below. One of the most insidious aspects of this extreme heat is that it doesn't end when the sun goes down. In many parts of the world, nighttime provides a crucial period of recovery. The body, stressed by daytime heat, gets a chance to cool down, rest, and repair. In Dubai's summer, that relief never comes. The urban heat island effect created by the city's own infrastructure means that the concrete and asphalt that baked all day continue to release heat all night long. Minimum overnight temperatures frequently remain above 30 degrees Celsius, or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. This persistent, suffocating warmth prevents the body from achieving its necessary recovery, meaning the heat stress from one day simply compounds onto the next, and the next. This chronic exposure significantly increases the risk of cardiovascular and respiratory problems, especially for vulnerable populations. The relentless nature of the heat, both day and night, is a silent health crisis in the making. But while many residents can retreat into air-conditioned homes and offices, there is a vast, largely invisible front line in this war against the heat. An army of hundreds of thousands of migrant workers who build the skyscrapers, landscape the gardens, and deliver the food that keeps the city running. For them, there is no escape. Their workplaces are the sun-baked construction sites and scorching city streets. They are the human engines of Dubai's growth, and they bear the brunt of its climate. To protect this vital workforce, the UAE federal government implemented a crucial regulation, the midday break. From June 15th to September 15th, during the absolute peak of the heat, all outdoor labor is strictly prohibited between 12:30 p.m. and 3 p.m. Companies are required to provide shaded resting areas and adequate hydration. The Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratization reported a compliance rate of 98.7% in 2022, a testament to the seriousness with which this rule is enforced. But even with this break, the reality is brutal. A construction worker might start their day at sunrise, work through the rapidly intensifying morning heat, take a forced 2.5-hour rest during the peak inferno, and then return to work as the sun begins to descend, with temperatures still well over 40 degrees Celsius. They are exposed to dangerous conditions for hours every single day, for months on end. The midday break is a vital and humane policy, but it's a mitigation strategy, not a solution. It acknowledges the danger without being able to eliminate it. These workers are the living embodiment of Dubai's climate paradox, building a dream city in conditions that are becoming increasingly nightmarish. This brings us to the core dilemma, the central vicious cycle at the heart of Dubai's survival. To make the city habitable, to allow millions to live and work in this climate, Dubai has become a world leader in air conditioning. AC isn't a luxury here. It's a life support system. It's in every home, every car, every mall, every office, and even at some bus stops. But what powers this colossal cooling apparatus? Energy. Massive amounts of it. During the summer, air conditioning can account for a staggering 60 to 70% of peak electricity consumption in buildings. In August of 2023, the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority, or DEWA, reported a record peak load of 10,495 megawatts, a colossal amount of power needed primarily to fight the heat. Herein lies the paradox. Much of that energy is traditionally generated by burning fossil fuels, the very activity that releases greenhouse gases and drives global warming. So, the hotter it gets, the more AC is needed. The more AC is used, the more energy is consumed. The more energy is consumed, the more emissions are produced, which in turn makes the planet, and Dubai, even hotter. It is, as one resident quoted by the Associated Press described it, a vicious feedback loop. The very technology that provides immediate survival is fueling the long-term crisis. Every cooled room is an island of comfort in a rising sea of heat, but the engine running that comfort is helping to make the sea rise faster. This is the fundamental unsustainable equation that Dubai, and indeed the world, must solve. If what we're sharing is opening your eyes to a side of Dubai you've never seen, could you do us a huge favor and hit the like button? And if you know someone, maybe a family member, who would be fascinated by the story of survival and engineering, share it with them. It helps us reach more people. It's been about 5 minutes. And you know, making these deep dives takes a massive team effort of research and production. So I have to ask again, if you haven't yet, please consider subscribing. I know. It's the second time I'm asking. But imagine trying to build a skyscraper without a foundation. That's what a channel is without subscribers. You are our foundation. It is that important. Thank you. Faced with this existential threat, Dubai has responded in the way it knows best, with jaw-dropping feats of engineering and a relentless push into futuristic technology. If the outside world is becoming inhospitable, the solution is to create a perfect artificial world indoors. The most famous example of this philosophy is Ski Dubai. Located inside the Mall of the Emirates, it is a massive indoor ski resort, complete with 85-meter-high slopes, chairlifts, and real snow, all maintained at a constant sub-zero temperature. It's an icon of defiant engineering, a snow-covered mountain inside a glass box in the middle of the desert. It stands as the ultimate symbol of Dubai's energy-intensive approach to escaping the heat, providing a surreal winter wonderland while temperatures just a few feet away outside the walls could be lethally hot. But the city's engineered environment extends far beyond this single spectacle. It is a seamless network of cooled spaces. You can leave your air-conditioned apartment, walk through an air-conditioned corridor to an air-conditioned elevator, take an air-conditioned metro train to a sprawling, air-conditioned mall with thousands of shops and restaurants, and spend an entire day without ever setting foot in the natural scorching heat. This network is the key to the misconception that Dubai is uninhabitable in the summer. The city doesn't shut down. Life simply moves indoors. It's a miracle of modern infrastructure, but one that comes at an almost unimaginable energy cost, perpetuating the very cycle it's designed to escape. Recognizing the limitations of brute force cooling, the UAE is also pioneering more nuanced, high-tech solutions. The most well-known of these is its ambitious cloud seeding program, run by the National Center of Meteorology, or NCM. With the UAE being one of the most arid countries on Earth, receiving less than 100 millimeters of rain per year, this program isn't primarily aimed at cooling, but at the equally critical issue of water scarcity. For decades, since the 1990s, the NCM has been sending specialized aircraft into promising-looking cumulus clouds. These planes fire hygroscopic salt flares into the clouds. The salt particles act as cloud condensation nuclei, encouraging tiny water droplets to clump together, grow larger and heavier, and eventually fall as rain. In 2022, alone, the NCM conducted 311 of these missions. the program is constantly evolving. In January 2024, the UAE's rain enhancement program awarded nearly $1.4 million to new research projects. These projects are exploring more advanced seeding materials and methods, including the use of autonomous drones and artificial intelligence to better identify and target the most suitable clouds, maximizing the efficiency of each mission. It's a vision of weather modification straight out of science fiction. The goal is to wring every last drop of moisture out of a sky that is naturally reluctant to give it. But can humanity really control the weather? The events of April 2024 served as a stark and chaotic reminder of the awesome power of the atmosphere. Dubai was hit by a historic weather event, a storm that dropped more rain in a single day than the city typically sees in an entire year. The resulting floods were catastrophic, shutting down the international airport, swamping highways, and inundating homes. Immediately, speculation swirled, with many pointing the finger at the cloud seeding program. Had the scientists gone too far? Had they accidentally triggered a deluge? While the public debate raged, the overwhelming scientific consensus offered a more sobering explanation. Atmospheric scientists concluded that the extreme rainfall was caused by a large, slow-moving weather system that was significantly amplified by the effects of climate change. A warmer atmosphere holds more moisture, about 7% more for every 1 degree Celsius of warming. When a storm system does form, it has far more water vapor to draw from, leading to rain events of an intensity that past climate models didn't predict. While the NCM had conducted seeding missions in the days prior, experts largely agree that their effect, if any, would have been minor compared to the sheer scale of the natural weather system. The flood wasn't a failure of weather modification technology. It was a terrifying demonstration of climate change in action. It proved that the consequences of a warming world aren't just extreme heat, but extreme weather of all kinds. Droughts, floods, and storms of unprecedented violence. Beyond trying to control the skies, Dubai is also looking at the ground beneath its feet. Dubai's municipality has experimented with solutions like cool pavements. These are road surfaces made with special materials that reflect more sunlight and absorb less heat than traditional dark asphalt. The goal is to reduce the surface temperature of roads, which in turn helps to lower ambient air temperature and mitigate the urban heat island effect. Similarly, promoting the use of white or light-colored reflective paint on the roofs of buildings is another passive cooling strategy. These measures, advocated for by climatologists like Friederike Otto, work with nature rather than against it. They don't require massive amounts of energy. Instead, they reduce the amount of heat the city absorbs in the first place. The question is one of scale and speed. Can these more sustainable solutions be rolled out fast enough across a vast growing metropolis to make a meaningful difference against the accelerating pace of climate change? The challenge is immense, because the numbers paint a stark picture of the future. The data is not ambiguous. Remember that projection. By 2050, over 5 months of the year could see temperatures above 40 degrees Celsius. Extreme heat is set to become the new normal. The impact on daily life, on the economy, and on the city's infrastructure will be profound. For example, extreme heat affects aviation. Hotter air is less dense. This means planes need more power and longer runways to get airborne. It can force airlines to reduce their maximum takeoff weight, meaning fewer passengers or less cargo. At one of the world's busiest airports, Dubai International, these aren't just theoretical problems, they're operational challenges that have to be managed, leading to potential delays and disruptions. Every aspect of this engineered city is being tested by the rising mercury. It was against this backdrop of escalating climate anxiety that Dubai stepped onto the world stage in late 2023 to host COP28, the United Nations annual climate change conference. The irony was not lost on anyone. A city and a nation built on fossil fuel wealth, now facing the existential consequences of fossil fuel emissions, was hosting the world's most critical conversation on how to move away from them. The conference location placed the UAE's own climate paradox under a global microscope. The summit ended with a landmark agreement, the UAE Consensus, which called for the first time on all nations to begin transitioning away from fossil fuels. The UAE itself has a net zero by 2050 strategic initiative, a bold pledge to decarbonize its economy. But the world watches with a critical eye. How can a major oil-producing nation lead this transition while its own survival depends so heavily on energy-intensive solutions and its economy on oil exports? It's a tightrope walk with the future of the planet at stake. As we near the end of our journey, it's clear that Dubai is more than just a city. It is a live-action experiment, a glimpse into a potential future for humanity. A future of technological marvels and profound environmental challenges. Okay, this is my last appeal, and I'll add a little humor to it because you've been so patient. I know I've asked before. Maybe you were taking a sip of water. Maybe a cat jumped on your keyboard. It happens. But if you have gotten any value, any new perspective from this story today, please, for the love of well-researched documentaries, hit that subscribe button. We're fighting the algorithm here, and every single subscriber is a soldier in our army. Don't make me beg again. Well, okay, maybe I will in the next video. Ultimately, Dubai is the ultimate testament to human ambition. The city's leaders and engineers are locked in an arms race with a rapidly changing climate, deploying incredible ingenuity and vast resources to keep their desert dream alive. They are building cooled cities within the city, attempting to make it rain from a cloudless sky, and painting the ground to reflect the sun. But the fundamental question remains: can we truly engineer our way out of a climate crisis? Are we simply building more elaborate, more energy-intensive life support systems, delaying an inevitable reckoning with nature? Dubai is on the absolute front line. Its struggle is a magnified version of the struggle we all face. The solutions it finds, or fails to find, will have lessons for all of us. As the mercury continues its relentless climb, and the wet bulb temperature inches closer to that deadly threshold, the city of the future is holding its breath, a glittering mirage on the horizon of a hotter, more uncertain world. Its fate may very well be a preview of our own.
Dubai is waging a war against reality, and if it loses, the city disappears. Over 3 million people live there, a shimmering metropolis built on a foundation of absolute ambition in one of the most water-scarce places on the planet. For decades, they have survived not on rivers, not on rain, but on sheer technological force. They manufacture their water, every last drop, a colossal, energy-hungry system designed to turn an unlivable desert into a global hub. But that system is now showing cracks. The very solutions that made Dubai possible are creating a new, more insidious crisis. The heat is getting more extreme, the sea they drink from is changing, and the weather they are attempting to engineer is turning against them. We're about to break down exactly how they do it and why the entire magnificent experiment might be backfiring. Before we do, what's the one word that comes to mind when you hear man-made rain? Drop it in the comments below, we're curious what you think. Alright, let's begin. And a quick heads up, we go deep on stories like this every week, stories about the intricate systems that run our world, and the fractures appearing within them. A huge number of people who watch and find value in these documentaries aren't subscribed. If that's you, take 1 second to find and hit that button. It's the single most important thing you can do to ensure this kind of deep dive analysis continues. It's urgent for us, and it means we can keep making this for you. Dubai was never meant to be. Before the glass towers and the 8-lane highways, this corner of the Arabian Peninsula was a sparse collection of coastal settlements. Life was governed by two things: the heat and the sea. Summer temperatures made the land itself hostile. Survival depended on trade, on pearling, on a deep understanding of a world defined by scarcity. Water was not a utility. It was life, drawn from brackish wells, guarded jealously, and never, ever wasted. The idea of a city of millions, with lush green golf courses and sprawling private swimming pools, was not just improbable, it was inconceivable, a fantasy. Then came the oil. The discovery didn't just bring wealth, it brought power, the power to defy the environment. The United Arab Emirates, formed in 1971, set out on one of the most audacious nation-building projects in human history. They decided that the desert was not a limit, it was a blank canvas. The population exploded. Foreign workers, financiers, and tourists poured in. The city grew outwards and upwards, a vertical forest of steel and glass rising from the sand. By the 2000s, Dubai had become a global symbol. Luxury, ambition, a future you could visit. And all of it, every hotel, every fountain, every blade of grass, was built on a single fragile resource that the nation simply did not have: water. The UAE has one of the highest per capita water consumption rates in the world, while having virtually no naturally renewable freshwater sources. That is not a problem, it is a paradox, one that requires a solution of almost unimaginable scale, and they built it. The answer lies just off the coast, in a series of sprawling industrial complexes that are the true heart of the nation. Desalination plants. These are not just facilities. They are mechanical gods performing an act of modern alchemy 24 hours a day. The largest of these, the Jebel Ali plant, is a city unto itself, a labyrinth of pipes, turbines, and membranes. Its purpose is simple and monumentally difficult: to take the hypersaline water of the Persian Gulf and strip the salt out, turning it into fresh water pure enough to drink. The primary technology at work is called reverse osmosis. Think of it as a filter, but on a molecular level. Seawater is forced at immense pressures against a series of polymer membranes, so fine that water molecules can pass through, but the larger salt, mineral, and impurity molecules cannot. What comes out one side is pure H2O. What is left behind is the problem. This process is staggeringly energy intensive. It takes a tremendous amount of power to generate the pressure needed. In the UAE, that power comes almost exclusively from burning fossil fuels, natural gas and oil. The country is effectively burning its geological wealth to create its hydrological lifeblood. Roughly a quarter of all the energy produced in Dubai is dedicated solely to the creation of water. It is a closed loop of consumption. The scale is difficult to comprehend. The Taweelah plant in Abu Dhabi, one of the newest and largest in the world, can produce 200 million gallons of fresh water every single day. 200 million. That's enough to fill over 300 Olympic-sized swimming pools every single day. This is not a supplement to their water supply. It is the supply. Over 90% of all the drinking water in the Emirates is manufactured this way. So you have this colossal machine, a city's metal heart, pumping life from a dying sea. But here's where the numbers get uncomfortable. Let us know in the comments. Do you think engineering can solve any problem? Or are there limits nature will always impose? The entire system depends on the assumption that the source, the Persian Gulf itself, is stable and limitless. It is not. It never was. For every gallon of fresh water produced by desalination, nearly 2 gallons of something else is created, a toxic, super-concentrated sludge known as brine. This isn't just salty water, it's a chemical cocktail. The seawater is treated with chlorine to prevent buildup on the intake pipes and anti-scalants to protect the expensive membranes. These chemicals, along with a concentration of salt more than twice that of normal seawater, are then pumped directly back into the Persian Gulf. Day after day, for decades, the effect has been slow, cumulative, and disastrous. The Persian Gulf is a relatively shallow and enclosed body of water. It doesn't have the deep circulating currents of an open ocean. The flushing time, the time it takes for its water to be replaced, is measured in years. So this brine discharge doesn't just dissipate, it accumulates. Marine scientists have been raising the alarm for years. The data is unambiguous. The salinity of the Gulf is steadily rising, creating conditions that are hostile to native marine life. The brine, being denser than the surrounding water, sinks to the seafloor, smothering seagrass meadows and coral reefs. These are the foundations of the entire marine ecosystem, the nurseries for fish stocks that have sustained the region for centuries. They are being systematically sterilized. The temperature of the discharge water is also several degrees warmer than the ambient sea temperature, creating thermal pollution that further stresses the ecosystem and contributes to coral bleaching. What was once a vibrant sea is slowly, quietly being turned into a barren, overheated saline desert. The very source of the UAE's water is being poisoned by the process of making it. It is a devastating feedback loop, and it gets worse. As the Gulf becomes saltier and warmer, the desalination process itself becomes less efficient. The membranes have to work harder, requiring more pressure, which in turn requires more energy. More energy means burning more fossil fuels, which accelerates climate change, which raises regional temperatures, which increases the demand for water. It is a perfect, self-propelling cycle of unsustainability. The engineers designed a solution for a water problem. They did not design a solution for the laws of thermodynamics. They were not asked to. They were asked to make the desert bloom, and they did, but the sea is now paying the price. And that is a debt that will eventually come due. It's a devastating paradox. Life for the city means death for the sea that surrounds it. If you're getting value from this deep dive, take a second to hit the like button. And if you have family or friends who need to understand the true cost of these futuristic cities, share this with them. It's a conversation we all need to be having. The engineers and officials in the UAE are not blind to this. They are acutely aware that their colossal desalination machine has a fatal flaw, so they turn their attention from the sea to the sky. They decided that if they could not rely on the water beneath them, they would create water from the air above them. This is the science of cloud seeding. It sounds like science fiction, but in the UAE, it is state policy. The UAE's National Center of Meteorology runs one of the most active and ambitious weather modification programs on Earth. The mission is simple: force rain to fall from clouds that would otherwise produce none. The process is both sophisticated and surprisingly direct. A fleet of specialized aircraft loaded with hygroscopic salt flares patrols the skies hunting for specific types of convective clouds that show potential. When a promising cloud is identified, the planes fly into its updraft and fire the flares. The salt particles act as cloud condensation nuclei. In simple terms, they are microscopic decoys that attract tiny airborne water droplets. These droplets, which are too small and light to fall on their own, begin to cluster around the salt particles. They merge, growing larger and heavier until they reach a critical mass. And then they fall as rain, forcing it. The program has been heralded as a major success. The NCM claims its operations can enhance rainfall by up to 25%. Videos regularly circulate online showing manufactured downpours in the middle of a sun-baked desert. On the surface, it is a triumph of ingenuity, a second, seemingly cleaner solution to the nation's existential water problem. Water from the sky, with no brine, no fossil fuels. A perfect answer. But there is no perfect answer. The first issue is scale. The amount of water generated by cloud seeding, while measurable, is a tiny fraction of the nation's overall demand. It is a supplement, a helpful boost. It cannot replace the industrial output of the desalination plants. You cannot run a city of 3 million people on coerced clouds. It is a psychological victory more than a hydrological one. But the more troubling questions are about control and consequence. And I know I've asked once, but if you're still with us and finding this valuable, that subscribe button is just sitting there. I'm told it's a matter of life and death for the channel. Okay, maybe not that dramatic, but it genuinely is the most critical thing for us. Now, back to the sky. In April of 2024, the illusion of control was shattered. Over a 24-hour period, the UAE was hit by the heaviest rainfall ever recorded in its history. A full year's worth of rain fell in a single day. The city of Dubai, a marvel of modern engineering, seized up. The airport, the world's busiest for international travel, became a lake. Runways were flooded, grounding hundreds of flights. The 8-lane superhighways became impassable rivers. Luxury cars were abandoned, submerged in water. Malls, homes, and the city's metro system were inundated. The futuristic city was paralyzed by the one thing it desperately wanted more of: water. Immediately, the questions began. The NCM confirmed that seeding planes had been in operation over the country in the days leading up to the storm. Did they cause this? Officials strenuously denied it. They stated, correctly, that the storm system was a large, naturally occurring weather event forecast well in advance. Cloud seeding, they argued, could not create a storm of this magnitude. It can only enhance what is already there. Most atmospheric scientists agree. Attributing a single weather event to climate modification is notoriously difficult, but that scientific nuance was lost in the floodwaters. The event exposed a deeper, more profound vulnerability. The city was built to keep the desert out. It was not built to handle a deluge from the sky. Its drainage infrastructure, designed for rare desert cloudbursts, was completely overwhelmed. The focus had always been on acquiring water, not on getting rid of it. Whether the cloud seeding program directly caused the flood is almost beside the point. The event revealed the staggering danger of playing with complex systems you do not fully understand. What if they had seeded that specific storm system as it approached? Could a small enhancement have pushed a large system past a critical tipping point, resulting in a wildly disproportionate outcome? Scientists call this nonlinear feedback. The uncomfortable truth is, nobody knows for sure. They asked for rain. They got a catastrophe, a warning shot from an atmosphere that does not respond to demands, only to physics. The crisis in the UAE is no longer just about scarcity, it is now about extremity. The region is a global hotspot for climate change. Temperatures are rising faster than the global average. The number of days exceeding 50 degrees Celsius, or 122 degrees Fahrenheit, is increasing. This extreme heat is not just a matter of discomfort. It is a direct threat to the entire system. Hotter air holds more moisture, making extreme rainfall events like the April flood more likely. Hotter sea temperatures provide more fuel for storms. At the same time, the extreme land temperature increases the demand for water for cooling and basic survival. The desalination plants, already running at their limit, must work even harder, consuming even more energy. The heat is an accelerant, a multiplier for every existing problem. All right, third time's the charm, I know. But we're about to get to the most unsettling part of this entire story, and if you've made it this far, you are exactly the kind of curious person we make these videos for. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider it. You're our core audience. Now let's talk about the final unbreakable limit. The UAE's water crisis is not happening in a vacuum. It is unfolding in one of the most geopolitically sensitive waterways in the world: Iran, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain. Every nation bordering the Persian Gulf is facing its own water crisis, and every one of them is turning to the same solution: desalination. Hundreds of plants now line the coast of the Gulf, all drawing from the same body of water and all discharging their brine back into it. It is a tragedy of the commons on a basin-wide scale, a collective, undeclared war on a shared resource. There is no overarching treaty governing brine discharge. no regional authority managing the cumulative impact. Each nation is acting in its own self-interest, hoping that its engineering is superior, that its economy can bear the rising cost. This creates a new, terrifying possibility, a tipping point. Is there a salinity level at which the Gulf becomes so toxic, so lifeless, that it is no longer usable for desalination? Could the water become so corrosive that it makes the technology prohibitively expensive or even inoperable? Could the marine die-off become so total that the sea itself becomes a dead zone? Scientists call this the brine feedback loop, and it's no longer theoretical. Models suggest that the Gulf's salinity and temperature are on a trajectory to reach levels that will severely impair the very technology that relies on it. To save themselves from the desert, the Gulf nations are creating one in the sea, and at some point the two may meet. The UAE is not a cautionary tale, not yet. It is a live experiment, a city that stared into the abyss of environmental limits and dared to engineer its way out. The scale of their achievement is undeniable. The desalination plants are marvels. The conservation efforts, which include advanced water recycling and drip irrigation, are world-class. The ambition is breathtaking. They have built a future in a place where no future was supposed to be, but their solutions are now breeding their own monsters. The brine is poisoning the sea. The manufactured rain risks catastrophic floods. The reliance on fossil fuels to power it all is contributing to the very heat that makes the entire system so necessary. Dubai is not an anomaly. It is a forerunner. It's the most extreme version of a question facing cities all over the world. Phoenix, Cape Town, Mexico City. How do we sustain growth in a world of shrinking resources? The UAE's answer has been technology at any cost. But the real cost is only now becoming clear. The engineering bought them time to build a global hub, time to diversify their economy away from oil, time for the rest of the world to watch and wonder. The question that remains is not whether they can keep the water flowing. The question is what they will have to sacrifice to do so. A living sea, a stable climate, a predictable world. The city of the future is here, but its foundation is resting on a rapidly dissolving present. The engineering is extraordinary, but the desert has a way of having the final say.
A major global city in the Middle East has become physiologically hostile to human life. Not just uncomfortable, not simply hot, but a place where the air itself can prevent a body from cooling. As of summer 2024, Dubai is experiencing a convergence of extreme events that threaten its very livability. The thermometer is breaking records, but the real danger is a number most people have never heard of. A measurement that determines the absolute limit of human survival. People are now navigating a city where stepping outside during certain hours is not a matter of discomfort, it is a matter of medical risk. The power grid, the only thing standing between 10 million residents and lethal heat, is straining to a degree never seen before. And the strangest part of this story is not just the unprecedented heat. It is that the heat is being punctuated by biblical-scale floods, a paradox that reveals the terrifying instability of a system hitting its breaking point. To understand what is happening, you have to understand the air itself, the invisible physics unfolding over the Persian Gulf. The crisis began to accelerate with a number. In May of 2025, the temperature in Dubai officially reached 51.6 degrees Celsius. That's 124.9 degrees Fahrenheit. It held there for 2 consecutive days, completely obliterating the previous all-time record of 50.2 degrees Celsius set back in 2009. That record had stood for over a decade. The new one barely lasted 24 hours before it was tied. But this is the detail that tells the real story. The number on the thermometer, the dry bulb temperature, is only half the equation. The other half is what makes the coast of the United Arab Emirates one of the most dangerous places on a warming planet. It's what Professor Jos Lelyeveld at the Max Planck Institute for Chemistry calls the lethal combination: humidity. The Persian Gulf is a uniquely vulnerable body of water. It's shallow, it's highly saline, and it is warming at an alarming rate. Its surface water temperature now regularly exceeds 35 degrees Celsius in the summer. It has essentially become a hot tub the size of a country, as Lelyeveld's research confirms. The warming of this sea means more evaporation, and more evaporation injects immense, staggering quantities of moisture into the atmosphere. This is where the common perception of the region fails. The phrase, "it's a dry heat," does not apply here. Not anymore. In July of 2024, a deadly heat and humidity wave descended on the entire Persian Gulf. In Dubai and across the water in Assalouye, Iran, a different temperature was being measured, the wet bulb temperature. This is not a measure of the heat you feel, but a measure of the air's capacity to cool you down. It works by wrapping a wet cloth around a thermometer bulb and measuring the temperature as the water evaporates. When humidity is low, evaporation is fast, and the wet bulb temperature is much lower than the air temperature. But when humidity is high, evaporation slows. At 100% humidity, evaporation stops completely. And so does the human body's primary cooling mechanism, sweating. When your sweat cannot evaporate, your core temperature rises uncontrollably. The absolute physiological limit for a healthy human resting motionless in the shade is a wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees Celsius or 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Above that threshold, the laws of physics make survival impossible for more than a few hours. In July 2024, locations along the Gulf Coast breached that exact threshold. The air became so saturated with heat and moisture that it could no longer support human life outdoors. This wasn't a forecast or a projection. It happened. Now, here's the part nobody is putting on the news. This isn't just a freak event. The entire Middle East is a climate hotspot warming at twice the global average rate. According to Carlo Buontempo, the director of the Copernicus Climate Change Service, 2023 was the hottest year on record for the planet. The world is accelerating towards the 1.5 degree warming threshold laid out in the Paris Agreement. But for a place like Dubai, which is already at the edge, that global average translates into a local catastrophe. It means the lethal combination of heat and humidity is no longer a once-in-a-century event. It is becoming the new summer baseline. Habib Ahmed, a senior meteorologist at the UAE's National Center of Meteorology, has been tracking the source. Persistent high-pressure systems trapping heat combined with moisture feeds from the superheated waters of the Gulf and the Arabian Sea. It's a perfect storm of atmospheric conditions, and it is centered directly over the gleaming coastal cities of the Emirates. Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Sharjah. Over 8.5 million people packed into an urban corridor that is becoming a laboratory for an unlivable future. The only thing keeping that future at bay is a constant citywide mechanical roar. Air conditioning in the UAE. During the peak summer months, 60 to 70% of all residential electricity consumption is for cooling alone. It is not a luxury. It is life support. And it is pushing the system to its absolute limit. This has created a terrifying feedback loop, what engineers call the cooling paradox. To survive the heat, you must run your air conditioner. The air conditioner works by taking heat from inside your apartment and pumping it outside. This waste heat, vented from millions of units, further elevates the ambient temperature of the city itself, the concrete and asphalt of the city's massive urban footprint. What scientists call the urban heat island effect absorb that solar and waste heat all day. At night, when the desert would normally cool, the city radiates that stored heat back into the air, preventing any natural recovery. Nighttime temperatures are rising even faster than daytime highs, robbing the human body of the crucial period of rest and repair it needs to cope with heat stress. The city becomes an oven that never turns off. The strain falls squarely on the shoulders of the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority, DEA-WA. Saeed Ahmed Al-Tayer, DEA CEO, oversees a grid that is performing a high-wire act every single summer. But as temperatures climb past 45 degrees Celsius, a new problem emerges. A problem of physics. Standard air conditioning compressors lose their efficiency dramatically at such high ambient temperatures. They have to work exponentially harder just to maintain the temperature differential between the cool interior and the superheated exterior. This causes a massive surge in power draw. For residents, this manifests as summer bill shock. DEWA's tiered billing system means that as their units run in this inefficient red zone, their consumption spikes, pushing them into more expensive electricity tariffs, even if they haven't touched their thermostats. The grid groans under the load, and the cost of survival skyrockets for everyone. It is a system under constant escalating pressure. A failure in this system, a citywide blackout during a 51-degree heat wave, is a scenario that is no longer unthinkable. This infrastructure strain extends beyond the power grid. It is written into the very materials of the city. At Dubai International Airport, one of the world's busiest travel hubs, the 51.8 degrees Celsius record set in July 2021 was not just a weather statistic. It was an operational crisis. Extreme heat changes the density of the air. Hot air is less dense, which means aircraft wings generate less lift. Takeoff runs need to be longer. Payload capacities might need to be reduced. In temperatures above 50 degrees Celsius, airlines must make difficult calculations, sometimes delaying or rerouting flights. The fundamental operations of a global crossroads are being dictated by the thermometer. The asphalt on the roads begins to soften and deform at these temperatures, requiring specialized, expensive materials just to keep the city's arteries from melting. The cooling paradox plays out everywhere. Every system designed to make life possible is working against itself, adding more heat and more strain in a cycle that only gets worse. Then, on April 16, 2024, the cycle did something no one expected. It didn't just get hotter. It broke in a completely different direction. After months of heat and drought, the skies over the UAE opened. In a single 24-hour period, a deluge of historic proportions swept across the country. At a place called Khatmal Shakla in Al Ain, the gauges measured 254.8 millimeters of rain. That is over 10 inches. It is more rain than the UAE typically receives in 2 entire years. The city of Dubai was paralyzed. Highways turned into rivers. Luxury cars were submerged up to their roofs. The airport, the same one battling extreme heat, was flooded with planes taxiing through deep water. The desert metropolis, engineered for sun and sand, had no answer for a volume of water it was never designed to handle. Immediately, speculation swirled. The blame fell on the UAE's cloud seeding program, an effort to enhance rainfall in the arid nation. But this is the detail that connects the flood to the heat. The scale of the storm was orders of magnitude beyond anything cloud seeding could produce. A team of scientists, led by Dr. Diana Francis, head of the Environmental and Geophysical Sciences Lab at Khalifa University in Abu Dhabi, conducted an immediate analysis. Her team, working with the World Weather Attribution Initiative, concluded that while cloud seeding may have had a minor influence, the primary driver was the same culprit behind the extreme humidity, abnormally warm ocean waters. The storm system drew in a historic amount of moisture from the Arabian Sea, which had been superheated by the same climate trends. Their models showed that human-driven climate change made a rainfall event of this magnitude up to 30 times more likely. In other words, the flood and the heat were two symptoms of the same disease. The atmosphere, overloaded with energy and moisture from warming seas, is lashing out with ever greater volatility. First fire, then water. The aftermath of the flood presented another bizarre, almost alien spectacle. By mid-2024, satellite imagery revealed an unprecedented greening of the desert surrounding the UAE. The massive influx of water caused a dramatic, widespread bloom of vegetation in areas that were barren sand for as long as they had been mapped. In some regions, vegetation cover increased by over 100%. The desert itself, the symbol of the region's arid stability, was changing its color. It was a stark visual confirmation that the fundamental rules of the region's climate were being rewritten in real time. The ecosystem was responding to a shock it had never experienced in modern history. The eerie desert bloom and the flooded underpasses of Dubai were two sides of the same coin. A system pushed far outside its normal operating range, capable of swinging from one violent extreme to another with terrifying speed. Zoom out, and the geography makes the mechanism clear. The UAE sits at approximately 24 degrees north latitude, in a subtropical zone that is becoming increasingly unstable. The same Arctic warming that is melting glaciers is also causing the jet stream to become wavier and more erratic. This allows massive high-pressure systems, or heat domes, to lock in place for longer periods, just as one did over the Pacific Northwest in June 2021, killing over 600 people. The UAE is now a prime location for these stalled weather patterns, trapping heat over the shallow evaporating Gulf. This is the part the headlines do not capture. The system isn't just getting warmer, it is losing its predictability. The steady, reliable rhythm of the seasons is being replaced by a chaotic staccato of record-breaking events. But a city is not just infrastructure and weather data, it is people. And for a significant portion of Dubai's population, there is no air-conditioned sanctuary. An estimated 3.5 million migrant workers, primarily from South Asia, form the backbone of the UAE's construction and service industries. They build the skyscrapers, pave the roads, and maintain the gardens. And they work outside. The UAE government mandates a midday work ban when temperatures exceed 50 degrees Celsius. But the wet bulb threat changes the entire risk calculation. A wet bulb globe temperature in the high 90s Fahrenheit can be deadly even in the shade, and even outside of the peak midday hours. Human Rights Watch has issued repeated severe warnings about the life-threatening conditions faced by millions of laborers across the Gulf. They are caught in an impossible situation, the economic need to work versus the physiological impossibility of doing so safely. The polished chrome and glass of Dubai is being built and maintained by a workforce enduring conditions that are crossing the threshold of human survivability. The city's hospitals are on the front lines, reporting sharp increases in emergency room visits for heat stroke and heat exhaustion every summer, particularly among outdoor workers and the elderly. The human cost of the heat is not a future projection, it is being paid right now. The crisis is a complex machine with interlocking parts. The warming planet creates a warming sea. The warming sea evaporates, loading the air with moisture. That moisture combines with record heat to create lethal wet bulb conditions along the coast. The same moist, energy-laden atmosphere then fuels unprecedented rainfall events that the desert cities cannot handle. To survive the heat, the cities rely on a massive cooling infrastructure that consumes immense energy, strains the grid, and ironically, adds even more heat to the urban environment. This is the state of affairs in a world that has warmed by just over 1 degree Celsius. The Director General of the NCM, Dr. Abdullah Al-Mandous, and his counterparts across the region are no longer just forecasting the weather, they are tracking the advance of an entirely new climate. So where does it go from here? The trajectory is clear. As Carlo Buontempo from Copernicus notes, the world is now bound to overshoot the 1.5 degree target. The choice is no longer about preventing it, but about managing the consequences of that overshoot. For Dubai and the coastal UAE, this is an existential challenge. Dr. Diana Francis is blunt. Energy demand for cooling will surge and water scarcity will intensify due to higher evaporation. Looking ahead, adaptation will be as critical as mitigation. Adaptation means strengthening the grid, redesigning cities with more green spaces and reflective materials, developing more efficient cooling technologies, and fundamentally rethinking how to live in a place that is actively trying to expel you. But how do you adapt to an environment where the air itself becomes your enemy? By 2030, extreme heat is projected to cause a 2.6% reduction in total working hours in the UAE. That's a massive economic blow caused purely by heat stress-induced productivity loss. The systems that made Dubai's meteoric rise possible, abundant energy, a global workforce, and predictable weather, are all coming under simultaneous relentless attack from the climate itself. The city built on the promise of defying the desert is now locked in a battle with the sky. A stalled weather system in the summer of 2026 could see Dubai's record of 51.6 degrees fall, once again. The power draw from DEWA's grid would spike to a new, precarious high. The sun set over the Persian Gulf an hour ago. The temperature did not leave with it, not dropping, not relenting. At 3 a.m. in August of 2023, with the city lights blazing below, the official instruments at Dubai International Airport registered a minimum nighttime temperature that was functionally indistinguishable from a hot afternoon. The air, thick with moisture, held on to the day's extreme heat as if the desert's most fundamental rule had been broken. Over 3.5 million people are now living inside a city that has forgotten how to cool down. The natural desert cycle, the promise of relief after sundown, is failing. It's a strange phenomenon, a slow and silent emergency unfolding while the city sleeps. Let me know what you think about this shift in the city's climate in the comments. This is not just a story about a heat wave. It is a story about a physical change to the environment itself, a process that is accelerating, and what happens when the very materials of a modern metropolis begin to work against its inhabitants. To understand the change, you have to understand the expectation. The desert has a rhythm. Intense solar radiation bakes the sand and rock during the day. But after sunset, under clear, dry skies, that heat radiates back out into space with remarkable speed. This is called diurnal cooling. It is the signature of an arid climate. It is the reason desert civilizations have endured for millennia. The promise of a cool night was as certain as the rising of the sun. But in Dubai, that promise is being systematically erased. Over 85% of the city's urban core is now covered by surfaces that break this natural law. Concrete, asphalt, the glass facades of hundreds of skyscrapers. These are not passive materials. They are active participants in the climate. During the day, they function as thermal batteries, absorbing and storing immense quantities of solar energy. And here is the detail that tells the real story. After sunset, when the natural desert sand is already shedding its heat, cooling by 20 or even 30 degrees Celsius within hours, the asphalt of Sheikh Zayed Road and the concrete towers of downtown Dubai begin their own slow, deliberate release. They discharge the stored heat back into the streets, into the air between buildings. An urban canyon in Dubai may only cool by 5 or 10 degrees all night. The city itself becomes a radiator. This is the urban heat island effect, a phenomenon documented in cities worldwide. But in Dubai, it is colliding with other forces to create something new and uniquely dangerous. The data from the National Center of Meteorology is unambiguous. Nighttime minimum temperatures are rising, and the rate of that rise is increasing. The effect is not uniform. It is a map of heat with its most intense zones concentrated in the densest areas. Dr. Suleiman Mostamandi, a climate researcher at the American University of Sharjah, has studied this very process. His work shows that the temperature difference between Dubai's urban core and the surrounding unbuilt desert can be as much as 7 degrees Celsius. This difference is most pronounced not in the heat of the day, but in the middle of the night. The city is literally holding on to its heat longer and more efficiently than the natural landscape it replaced. It has built itself into a more effective furnace. This is the part the headlines do not capture. The story is not just that Dubai is hot. It is that the architecture of the city itself, the very symbol of its modernity and ambition, has created a thermal trap, and that trap is being supercharged. Understanding these mechanics is the first step. And if you want to understand more of these hidden systems shaping our world, you can subscribe for more videos a little later. For now, consider the scale of this transformation. In 1975, Dubai's population was just over 183,000 people. It was a trading post, a small city by a creek, surrounded by vast open desert that breathed heat in and out every 24 hours. Today, it is a metropolis of over 3.5 million, a vertical city whose very existence has altered its own microclimate. That growth is the engine of the urban heat island. Every new tower, every new road, every new parking lot adds another element to the city-sized thermal battery. And as the city expands, the cooling desert winds have a harder time penetrating its core. The traditional sea breeze, once a reliable source of evening relief, now pushes air across miles of superheated suburbs before it even reaches the downtown area, arriving not as a cool draft, but as a wave of warm, humid air from the Persian Gulf. This introduces the second invisible force at play: humidity. A desert night at 30 degrees Celsius can feel tolerable if the air is dry. The body can still cool itself through the evaporation of sweat. But a 30-degree night in Dubai, with nighttime humidity levels often exceeding 90%, is a different physiological reality. The air is already so saturated with water vapor that sweat cannot effectively evaporate from the skin. The body's primary cooling mechanism is disabled. This is where scientists stop talking about temperature and start talking about something called wet bulb temperature. It is a combined measure of heat and humidity, and it is the most accurate metric for human heat stress. Dr. El-Fatih El-Tahir, a professor at MIT who has modeled the future climate of the Middle East, has issued stark warnings about this. His research shows that the Persian Gulf region is one of the few places on Earth where by the end of the century, summer wet bulb temperatures could exceed the threshold of human survivability. That threshold is 35 degrees Celsius wet bulb. At that point, even a healthy person, sitting in the shade with unlimited water, cannot shed their internal body heat and will perish from hyperthermia in a matter of hours. Dubai, in its most extreme summer nights, is already approaching wet bulb temperatures of 32 degrees. This is not a distant, abstract threat. This is a present and growing danger. The lack of nighttime cooling is a significant public health risk. When the body cannot recover from the heat of the day, heat stress becomes cumulative. The risk of heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and cardiovascular strain increases dramatically. Every night that the temperature fails to drop below 30 degrees Celsius is a night the city's population, especially its outdoor workers and vulnerable residents, is denied a period of physiological recovery. During the prolonged heat dome event of August 2023, the UAE's National Center of Meteorology issued unprecedented warnings, not just for the daytime highs, but specifically for the dangerous combination of high nighttime temperatures and extreme humidity. This is new territory. The warnings are no longer just about the sun, they are about the dark. Now, here's the part nobody is connecting on the evening news. The local problem of the urban heat island is being amplified by an accelerating global problem. According to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, the Middle East is warming at approximately twice the rate of the global average. This is not a projection. It is a measured reality. This broader warming trend means that the baseline from which the urban heat island effect operates is getting higher and higher. The heat waves are becoming more frequent, more intense, and longer lasting. A weather pattern called the Arabian Heat Low, or AHL, is central to this story. Dr. Diana Francis, a lead scientist at Khalifa University in Abu Dhabi, has done extensive research on the AHL. She describes it as a vast area of low pressure that forms over the Arabian Peninsula in the summer, drawing in hot, dry air. Her work, published in 2021, shows a clear positive trend in the intensity of this heat low, a trend directly linked to the overall increase in regional surface and air temperatures. A stronger Arabian heat low means more intense, persistent heat. It contributes to the formation of heat domes, vast caps of high pressure that squat over the region for weeks, suppressing cloud formation and preventing any rain. Underneath this dome, the sun's radiation bakes the surface without interruption. The city of Dubai, with its millions of tons of concrete and asphalt, absorbs this intensified energy load day after day, and night after night it struggles to release it. It's a critical piece of the puzzle that most people don't consider. The combination is a perfect storm. If you think this is important information, low-key, send this to a friend who should know about it. The local man-made environment of the city is becoming more efficient at trapping heat. At the exact same time, the global climate is delivering more heat to be trapped. Think of the city as an amplifier. The signal coming in, solar radiation, is getting stronger due to climate change. And the amplifier itself, the urban fabric of Dubai, is being turned up through continued urbanization. The result is the deafening roar of nighttime heat. The record nighttime minimums are not just statistics, they are symptoms of this compounding crisis. The July 2021 heat wave saw consecutive nights stay above 35 degrees Celsius. The summer of 2017 brought a daytime high of 49.2 degrees, with nights that offered almost no respite. These are not just hot summers. They are a preview of a new baseline. Projections for 2050 suggest average temperatures in the region could rise by up to 4 degrees Celsius if current emissions trends continue. Some models, looking out to 2070 and 2100, suggest that without massive and immediate adaptation, parts of the Arabian Peninsula may become functionally uninhabitable during the summer months. The consequences ripple outward from human health into every aspect of the city's infrastructure. The Dubai Electricity and Water Authority, DEAA, is on the front lines of this battle. Every degree the temperature fails to drop at night translates into millions of air conditioning units running longer and harder. During the heat waves of summer 2023, DEAY reported record-breaking overnight electricity demand. The city's power grid, one of the most advanced in the world, is being pushed into uncharted territory. The stress on the energy infrastructure is immense. Projections from a 2018 study by Shanks and others suggest that energy consumption for building cooling in the UAE could increase by another 22.2% by 2050, purely as a result of the rising temperatures. This creates a dangerous feedback loop. The hotter it gets, the more energy is needed for cooling, and depending on the source of that energy, the more greenhouse gases are potentially released, further accelerating the warming. It's a cycle that is difficult to break. The city is aware of the challenge. This is not a crisis going unnoticed. The Dubai municipality and the UAE Ministry of Climate Change and Environment are actively implementing strategies to combat the heat. In 2023, new building codes were launched mandating the use of cool, reflective materials for roofs and walls. The goal is to increase the city's albedo, its ability to reflect sunlight rather than absorb it. There is a major push for green infrastructure, planting more trees, creating more parks and green spaces that can provide shade and evaporative cooling. Projects like the sustainable city on the outskirts of Dubai are being held up as blueprints for the future. It is a residential community designed from the ground up to mitigate heat, using passive cooling strategies, shaded walkways, and vegetation to create a microclimate that is measurably cooler than the surrounding developments. These are vital initiatives, but they are racing against the clock. They are attempts to retrofit a metropolis, to reverse engineer a cooler environment, while the larger climatic forces continue to push in the opposite direction. The sheer physics of the situation is daunting. A study from Khalifa University published between 2022 and 2023 showed that the nighttime cooling rate in urbanized areas of the UAE has decreased by a staggering 40% since 1980. The city is losing its ability to exhale the day's heat. The natural phenomenon of radiative sky cooling, where surfaces radiate their heat into the cold vacuum of space, is still physically possible. The sky above Dubai is just as cold. But the urban geometry of the city prevents it from working effectively. Heat radiating from a street is simply absorbed by the building next to it. Heat radiating from one building's wall is absorbed by the skyscraper across the street. The heat is trapped in a canyon of glass and steel. It cannot escape. This is a story of unintended consequences, written on a monumental scale. The very elements that define Dubai's skyline, its ambition and its place on the world stage, are the same elements creating this profound environmental challenge. When the city was built, the primary architectural challenge was keeping the sun out during the day. The focus was on sealed, air-conditioned interiors. Little thought was given to how the exterior surfaces of those buildings would behave collectively after dark. Now, the city must confront the reality that its buildings have become a collective heating system. Dr. Jos Lilieveld of the Max Planck Institute, a leading researcher on Middle Eastern climate, has effectively characterized this convergence, noting that the combination of rapid urbanization and global warming has created a crucible for nocturnal heat stress in cities like Dubai. Let us zoom back into the human scale. A construction worker finishing a shift at sunset, returning to a labor camp where cooling is limited.
Close your eyes. Feel the cool glass in your hand. Lift it to your lips. A single sip of pure, clean, refreshing water. Now, where are you? You might imagine a mountain cabin with a glass filled from a glacial stream, or a lush green country where rain is plentiful and rivers run deep. Forget it. The year is now. The place, the coastal desert of the Arabian Peninsula, the city, Dubai. A metropolis of 9 million people, of glass towers that pierce the clouds, of green lawns and sprawling golf courses that defy the sand, and the water in your glass. It didn't come from a river. It didn't fall from the sky. It was born in the sea, and then it was made. What does it feel like to build a city on sand? What sound does a manufactured river make? What does it cost, not in money, but in energy, to give a desert metropolis a drink? Before we trace that journey, a quick question for you. What's the first thing you think of when you hear the word Dubai? Is it skyscrapers, luxury, the desert? Let me know in the comments. A surprising number of people who enjoy these deep dives forget to subscribe. If this is the kind of story that fascinates you, please take a moment to click that button. It's the single most important thing you can do to ensure we can keep making them. We can't build this community without you. Now, let's begin where every drop of Dubai's lifeblood begins, in the warm, saline waters of the Arabian Gulf. The first thing you notice is the immensity. We are not talking about a small pipe. Picture an intake structure so vast it could swallow a train, submerged miles offshore. These are the mouths of the city. Giant concrete canals that draw the Gulf itself into the machine. The water here is warm, sometimes reaching 35 degrees Celsius in the summer, and it is salty. Incredibly salty. Salter than most of the world's oceans due to high evaporation and limited circulation. This isn't just water. This is a challenge. For every 1,000 grams of water pulled into these intakes, almost 45 grams are dissolved salts, a hostile raw material. From these offshore intakes, the seawater begins a journey through a series of screens. First, heavy grates to block large debris, then finer and finer meshes to remove jellyfish, seaweed, and sand. The water is dosed with chemicals to prevent algae and bacteria from growing inside the veins of the system. This isn't a gentle filtration. This is an industrial purification, a cleansing before the main event. Because what happens next is where the modern miracle truly begins. The water arrives at a place that looks less like a water treatment facility and more like a sprawling power station. This is the Jebel Ali desalination plant, the largest complex of its kind on the entire planet. It is the heart of Dubai, and its constant, thunderous hum is the city's true heartbeat. Here, two different kinds of magic happen. One, a process of brute force and heat. The other, an act of submolecular pressure. Let's look at the older method first. Multi-stage flash distillation, or MSF. Forget the image of a simple kettle boiling water. This is something else entirely. Imagine a series of chambers, a cascade of pressurized rooms. In the first chamber, the pre-treated seawater is heated, but not to a full boil. It's under high pressure, which keeps it in a liquid state even as its temperature soars. Then, suddenly, this superheated brine is released into the next chamber, where the pressure is slightly lower. And it happens. The water instantly and violently flashes into steam, leaving the heavy salts and minerals behind. It's not a gentle evaporation. It's an explosive release. This pure steam then rises and billows against bundles of cold pipes running through the top of the chamber. And what is flowing through those pipes? More cold seawater, on its way to be heated. The steam condenses on these pipes, becoming droplets of perfectly pure, distilled water, which are collected in trays. It's an exquisitely efficient dance of energy. The very process of condensation preheats the next batch of seawater, reducing the total energy required. This process repeats chamber after chamber, each one at a slightly lower pressure than the last, flashing more and more water into steam until all that's left is a highly concentrated, sludgy brine that is returned to the sea. This is the sound of the plant, the roar of burners heating the brine, the hiss of water flashing into vapor, the hum of massive pumps moving millions of gallons every hour. It's a process born of the mid-20th century, a testament to industrial might, powerful, reliable, but incredibly thirsty for energy. Most of the MSF plants in Dubai are co-located with natural gas-burning power stations for a reason. They feed on the waste heat, a symbiotic relationship between generating power and generating water. What part of this process fascinates you most so far? The sheer scale of the intake, Dakrobidabifi, or the science of separating salt from water? I'm curious to read your thoughts below, but that's not the only method. Side by side with these cathedrals of steam and steel is a quieter, more modern technology, a process that feels more like biology than industry. This is reverse osmosis. To understand reverse osmosis, you first have to understand regular osmosis. It's a fundamental principle of life. If you have a semi-permeable membrane, a barrier that lets water pass through but not salt, and you put fresh water on one side and salt water on the other, the fresh water will naturally flow towards the salt water. It's trying to create balance, to dilute the saltier side. Life depends on this. It's how our cells regulate their water content. Reverse osmosis does exactly what its name implies. It brutally reverses the natural order of things. Instead of letting nature take its course, engineers apply immense, overwhelming pressure to the saltwater side. Hundreds of pounds per square inch of force. A pressure so great it overcomes the natural osmotic tendency and forces the water molecules to do something they would never do on their own. They are squeezed, molecule by molecule, through the membrane, leaving the salt, the minerals, the impurities behind. Picture the membrane itself. It's not a simple filter. It's a marvel of material science. Spirally wound sheets of a polymer composite engineered with pores so impossibly small, less than a nanometer across, that a water molecule can barely pass through. But a sodium ion, slightly larger and carrying an electrical charge, is rejected. It's a molecular gatekeeper. The water that makes it through is called permeate. The rejected, super salty water left behind is the concentrate, or brine. At the Jebel Ali plant, thousands of these membrane-filled cylinders are housed in long white vessels, arranged in massive buildings called RO trains. The sound here isn't the roar of furnaces. It's the high-pitched whine of the high-pressure pumps, the constant, relentless hum of energy being applied to fight physics. This technology is more energy efficient than MSF, which is why most new desalination plants are built using reverse osmosis. But it's also more delicate. The membranes are sensitive, easily clogged by oil or biological growth, which is why the pre-treatment of the seawater is so aggressive, so critical. If you know someone who would be amazed by the engineering behind this city, consider sharing this with them. And if you're getting value from this journey, a quick tap of the like button helps more people discover it. Now, whether it came from the flash of steam in an MSF chamber or was squeezed through the pores of an RO membrane, the water we have now is in a strange state. It is almost perfectly pure H2O, which sounds like the goal, but it's not. This water is dead. It's corrosive, it tastes flat, and it lacks the essential minerals our bodies need. Drinking it would be unhealthy. It would leach minerals from your bones. So the next stage of the journey begins, bringing the water back to life. In what's called a post-treatment or remineralization phase, this pure, aggressive water is passed through beds of limestone and dolomite. It dissolves just enough of the calcium and magnesium to restore a natural mineral balance. Chlorine is added to ensure its safety as it travels through the city's arteries, and the pH is carefully adjusted. This is the final touch, a manufactured water given a carefully calibrated taste of the earth. When Jesus said, "I am the living water," he was speaking to people who knew the difference between the stagnant water of a dirty cistern and the fresh, life-giving water of a flowing spring. Dubai's engineers have to create that living water. They take the dead, sterile product of their machines and carefully resurrect it into something that can sustain a city. And then comes the final journey, from the plant to the people. The scale of this is hard to comprehend. Every single day, the Jebel Ali complex alone can produce over 500 million gallons of this manufactured water. That's enough to fill 750 Olympic swimming pools every 24 hours. This water is pushed into a sprawling network of pipelines by colossal pumping stations. Some of these pipes are over 2 meters in diameter. Think of a tunnel, buried beneath the sand, filled with water under high pressure. This network is the city's vascular system. It stretches for thousands of kilometers, a hidden web that connects every skyscraper, every villa, every hotel, every fountain to that single source at Jebel Ali. The pressure required is immense. To push water to the top of the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, requires a series of powerful booster pumps inside the building itself, lifting the water in stages, via a vertical river climbing more than half a kilometer into the sky. But what if the plant stops? What if there's a power failure, a major mechanical breakdown, or even a deliberate disruption? For a city that gets 99% of its drinking water from this single lifeline, that's not a question. It's an existential threat. This is why Dubai has been building a new kind of insurance. Massive strategic water reservoirs. We're not talking about a water tower. Near the edge of the desert, engineers have built the largest man-made water reservoir in the world. It's not a lake on the surface, exposed to the sun and evaporation. It's an artificial aquifer, a vast underground lake filled with desalinated water. Over years, billions of gallons of excess production have been pumped into a natural underground basin, a wand where the water can be stored safely for months, even years. It is Dubai's emergency reserve, a buffer between the city and catastrophe. It's the modern equivalent of Joseph's storehouses in Egypt, a hedge against a future famine, but a famine of water, not grain. And just a quick pause. I know this might be the second time you're hearing this, but it truly is vital. If you're still with me on this journey into the heart of Dubai's lifeline and you haven't subscribed yet, please consider it. Every single one of you helps keep this channel alive. Now, let's confront a difficult truth. This entire process, this miracle of engineering, comes at a staggering cost. The first cost is energy. Desalination is one of the most energy-intensive industrial processes on Earth. To make 1 cubic meter of water, enough for a few showers, conventional plants burn a significant amount of natural gas. Dubai, a city built on oil wealth, has been able to afford this, but it contributes massively to the region's carbon footprint. It's the paradox of the modern desert city. To create life-giving water, it burns the very fossil fuels that are warming the planet and making the desert even more unforgiving. There's a race to solve this. Connecting reverse osmosis plants directly to massive solar farms, using the desert's most abundant resource, sunlight, to solve its most critical shortage, water. The Noor Energy One project, a massive concentrated solar power and photovoltaic plant in the Dubai desert, is designed in part to power this new generation of desalination, a future where the sun both bakes the land and quenches its thirst. But there is a second, hidden cost: the brine. Remember the salt, the minerals, all the impurities left behind? For every liter of fresh water produced, especially with older MSF technology, you can get up to 2 liters of super salty, chemical-laden wastewater. This brine has to go somewhere, and it goes back into the Arabian Gulf. Over time, this has a measurable effect. The constant discharge of hot, dense, hypersaline water sinks to the seabed, creating dead zones where very little marine life can survive. It raises the overall salinity of the Gulf, which in turn makes the raw seawater harder and more energy-intensive to desalinate in the first place. It is a slow, creeping feedback loop. The solution to the water problem creates a new set of environmental problems. It's a delicate, high-stakes balancing act on a regional scale. This changes how we must see the city. When we see the spectacular fountains of the Dubai Mall dancing to music, shooting water hundreds of feet into the air, that isn't just a display, that is a statement, a declaration of victory over the desert. Every drop of that water was pulled from the sea, stripped of its salt by incredible force, brought back to life with minerals, and pumped to that spot. It is liquid energy. It is manufactured abundance. It is perhaps the most expensive fountain water on the planet. This is the great myth bust of Dubai. Forget the idea of a desert oasis drawing from a deep, timeless well. The natural groundwater aquifers that existed here for centuries are almost gone. Depleted decades ago. What little remains is often too brackish for any use without, you guessed it, desalination. The city didn't just grow beyond its natural means. It has replaced them entirely. It runs on a different operating system, not of nature, but of engineering. Think about the language of the city. We speak of resourcefulness, of innovation, of building the future. When a developer plans a new district with lush parks and swimming pools, that isn't just design. That is a calculation, a line item in a budget for water production. Every green lawn is a testament to the power of a reverse osmosis membrane. Every chilled swimming pool is a product of a multi-stage flash chamber. The hands that built this city didn't just pour concrete and raise steel. They laid thousands of kilometers of pipe. They designed pumps that could defy gravity. They perfected the art of molecular separation on a scale previously unimaginable. This is the work of the modern Tecton. Not a builder of stone houses, but a builder of ecosystems. A craftsman who works not with wood and rock, but with pressure, temperature, and polymer membranes. When you see a gardener in Dubai hand-watering a patch of flowers, that act is a ritual. He is dispensing not just water, but a complex, manufactured product that began its journey miles out at sea, passed through a multi-billion-dollar industrial machine, and traveled through a pressurized subterranean network to reach his hose. That single drop on a petunia petal represents more energy and technology than an entire village's water supply in another part of the world. Now, step back. Think about everything we've seen. The vast mouth of the intake canal, drinking the sea. The violent, hissing flash of steam in a chamber. The silent, immense pressure forcing water through a membrane pore by pore. As the limestone beds, giving the dead water a taste of earth. The hum of the pumps in the desert, pushing a river through a hidden tunnel. The artificial aquifer, a promise held in reserve beneath the sand. All of it. One city, one lifeline, one monumental act of will against nature. This is where humanity has arrived. The ability not just to find water, not just to move it, but to make it. To take an environment fundamentally hostile to urban life and, through sheer force of engineering and energy, bend it to our will. Dubai isn't an illusion, it is a testament. A testament to what is possible when a single need, the need for water, is met with unlimited ambition. When the Bible speaks of making the desert bloom, it was a metaphor for divine blessing. In Dubai, it is a matter of public policy and capital expenditure. The parables here are written in blueprints and flow diagrams. The house built on rock is a skyscraper anchored in bedrock, cooled by water made from the sea. The seed that finds good soil finds soil that is irrigated by a complex, computer-controlled drip system. This is the state of our world. We no longer just live on the earth. We actively manage it, transform it, and in places like Dubai, we recreate it. The city isn't just a collection of buildings. It is a massive life support machine. And like any machine, it is fragile. It requires constant maintenance, immense inputs of energy, and an unwavering belief that the system will hold. The next time you turn on a tap, take a moment. Whether you're in Dubai or Denver, London or Lima, think about the journey that water took to reach you. The engineering, the energy. Are the people who manage the vast, invisible system that brings you this simple, essential element. The founders of Dubai didn't just build a city, they built a long-term solution to an impossible problem. They looked at the desert, they looked at the sea, and they decided to build a bridge between them. A bridge of heat and pressure and pipes. And on that bridge, they built a future. This kind of story, the hidden machinery that makes our world possible, is what we are dedicated to exploring. The engineering marvels, the ecological challenges, the human ingenuity. This is the last time I'll ask, I promise. But if you want to be part of the next journey, subscribing makes all the difference in the world. If this has changed the way you see a city like Dubai, if you feel you understand the true price of that desert oasis, lean into that. Look at the world around you and ask a new question. Not just what is that, but how is that possible? The answers will change everything. I have a question for you. Knowing what it takes to produce water in Dubai, does it change your opinion of the city's famous fountains and green spaces? Are they beautiful displays or something else? Tell me in the comments.
A city designed to conquer the desert has reached a terrifying new threshold. In the shimmering metropolis of Dubai, the air itself is becoming unlivable. Not figuratively, literally. Scientists have identified an absolute limit for human survival, a combination of heat and humidity known as a wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees Celsius. Cross that line for more than 6 hours, and even a healthy person resting in the shade cannot survive. The Persian Gulf, the body of water that gives Dubai its coastline, has already started to cross it. The city recorded its all-time highest temperature of 49 degrees Celsius on July 24, 2023. Air conditioning now accounts for 70% of all electricity use on peak summer days. And then, after engineering a city to withstand unbearable heat, the sky broke open and Dubai began to drown. What does it feel like to live on the edge of what's survivable? It's a question that's becoming more urgent by the day. Let us know your first thoughts in the comments below. We go deeper than anyone else on these stories, but we have a shockingly low subscriber rate. A huge number of you who value this reporting simply forget to subscribe. To keep this level of deep dive investigation going, we absolutely need your support. Please take 1 second and hit that subscribe button right now. It is an emergency for independent channels like ours that refuse to scratch the surface. Okay, let's begin. This is the central paradox of Dubai. It is a miracle of modern engineering, a testament to human ambition built at coordinates 25.2048 degrees north, 55.2708 degrees east, on the edge of one of the hottest deserts on Earth. And the very systems that make this existence possible are creating a feedback loop that threatens to unravel it all. To understand Dubai's precarity, you must first understand the machine that keeps it alive. It is a vast citywide life support system running 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And it runs on two things: cooling and water. First, the cooling. In Dubai, air conditioning is not a luxury. It is a public utility as essential as power or water. The city is a network of climate-controlled bubbles. Homes, offices, malls, even the bus stops and metro stations are refrigerated against the staggering outdoor heat. This gargantuan task is managed in large part by Empower, the city's district cooling utility, one of the largest in the world. Headed by CEO Ahmad bin Shafar, it operates a network of plants that pipe chilled water to buildings across the city, providing a more efficient alternative to individual AC units. But more efficient does not mean low energy. The demand is relentless. On a peak summer day, the load on the electrical grid from cooling alone is immense, a staggering 70% of total consumption. This is the reality overseen by Saeed Mohammed Al Tayer, the CEO of the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority, or DEWA. His organization must meet a peak demand that regularly surges past 9,500 megawatts in the summer months, a figure driven almost entirely by the desperate need to stay cool. Then there is the water. In a city that receives an average of less than 100 millimeters of rain a year, nearly every drop of potable water is manufactured. Approximately 99% of Dubai's water is produced through desalination, an energy-intensive process of removing salt from seawater. DEWA runs massive desalination plants along the coast, primarily using a method called multi-stage flash distillation, which involves boiling seawater under pressure. This process consumes vast quantities of energy, which in Dubai is primarily generated by burning natural gas. It creates a perfect vicious cycle. The hotter the world gets, the hotter Dubai gets, the more air conditioning it needs. The more air conditioning it needs, the more energy it consumes, the more energy it consumes, and the more greenhouse gases it releases. Those emissions contribute to the warming that is pushing the city to its limits. Karim Elgandi, an urban sustainability expert at Chatham House, calls it a vicious cycle. The more the climate heats up, the more we need water, and the more energy we consume for desalination, which in turn contributes to climate change. Dubai is essentially trying to air condition itself out of a crisis that its own energy consumption is helping to fuel. Is this a blueprint for the future, or a cycle of self-destruction? It's a complex question, and we want to hear your take in the comments. Here's what it looks like when that cycle begins to break down. The heat is the first and most obvious pressure point. The summer of 2023 was a brutal warning. On July 24, the official temperature in Dubai hit 49.0 degrees Celsius, or 120.2 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the highest temperature ever recorded in the city's history. And that is just the ambient air temperature, the feels-like temperature. Or heat index, which accounts for the crippling humidity rising off the Persian Gulf, regularly soared past 60 degrees Celsius, or 140 degrees Fahrenheit. At these levels, unprotected exposure is dangerous within minutes. This extreme heat is not just a product of global trends. It is amplified by the city itself. This is the urban heat island effect. Dubai, which grew from a population of just over 183,000 in 1975 to more than 3.5 million today, has replaced porous desert sand with a dense landscape of concrete, asphalt, and glass. These materials absorb and retain solar radiation during the day, then slowly release that heat through the night. The result is that the city's center can be 2 to 5 degrees Celsius warmer than the surrounding desert, robbing residents of any nighttime relief. The city that was built to defy the heat is now a highly efficient heat trap. The very icons of its skyline, the skyscrapers that announce its global ambition, contribute to the problem. They create urban canyons that trap hot air and block cooling breezes. The vast stretches of multi-lane highways are rivers of black asphalt, baking under the sun. The city has become a machine for concentrating heat. This reality is most visceral for the hundreds of thousands of migrant workers who build and maintain the city. Since 2004, the UAE has implemented a midday break rule prohibiting outdoor work between 12:30 p.m. and 3 p.m. from June 15 to September 15. It is a necessary measure to prevent heat stroke and death. But even outside those hours, the work is grueling, performed in conditions that test the limits of human endurance. They are the frontline soldiers in Dubai's war against its own climate, and they are the most exposed. But the heat was only the first fracture. The second came from a direction nobody expected. On April 15, 2024, the warnings began. A massive storm system was gathering over the Arabian Peninsula. But no one was prepared for what came next. In the early hours of April 16th, the sky over the UAE turned black, and then it opened. It was not just rain. It was a deluge in atmospheric river of a scale never before seen. The National Center of Meteorology, the UAE's own government body, would later call it an unprecedented event in the 75-year history of the nation's recorded climate data. The numbers are staggering. In a country where the average annual rainfall is around 100 millimeters, the city of Al Ain, just inland from Dubai, was hammered with 254.8 millimeters, 10 inches, of rain in less than 24 hours. A year's worth of rain in a single day. Dubai itself was paralyzed. The city's infrastructure, engineered with meticulous precision to manage sun and heat, had almost no capacity to manage water. There was simply nowhere for it to go. The desert soil, baked hard by years of heat, could not absorb the downpour. The drainage systems, designed for infrequent minor desert showers, were instantly overwhelmed. Highways turned into rivers. Luxury cars were submerged, their alarms wailing uselessly under the murky water. The world-famous malls, temples of consumerism and cool air, began to flood with water cascading down from ceilings and pouring through entrances. The scale of this event is something most people don't understand. If you find this reporting valuable, please take a moment to like the video and share it with your family and friends. It helps spread awareness of what's really happening. The city's global lifeline, Dubai International Airport, one of the busiest travel hubs on the planet, ground to a halt. Its runways, taxiways, and aprons were transformed into a lake. Airplanes, marvels of modern technology, sat stranded in feet of water, looking like toys in a bathtub. Flights were canceled, diverted, and delayed for days, stranding tens of thousands of passengers and severing Dubai's connection to the world. The chaos at DXB was a powerful symbol of the city's vulnerability. A metropolis that prides itself on seamless futuristic efficiency was brought to its knees by the oldest force of nature: rain. The estimated economic damage across the country climbed past $1 billion. Then the questions began. How could this happen? In a city that plans for everything, that modifies its own weather, how could it be so catastrophically unprepared? The world's attention quickly turned to one of Dubai's most famous technological endeavors: cloud seeding. Here is what is not making most headlines. The immediate narrative seizing on the sci-fi image of a man-made storm was that the UAE had caused its own flood. The country's National Center of Meteorology, led by Dr. Abdullah Al-Mandouis, who is also the current president of the World Meteorological Organization, runs one of the world's most active weather modification programs. It has been conducting cloud seeding operations since the 1990s, firing salt flares from airplanes into promising cloud formations to encourage the formation of raindrops. And in the days leading up to the storm, the NCM had indeed flown 6 or 7 of these missions. The connection seemed obvious, a case of technological hubris gone wrong. But it was a scapegoat, a convenient, simple explanation for a deeply complex and terrifying reality. Meteorologists and climate scientists around the world were quick to push back. In a statement to Reuters, Dr. Friedrich Otto, a senior lecturer at the Grantham Institute for Climate Change at Imperial College London, was blunt. When we talk about heavy rainfall, we need to talk about climate change. Focusing on cloud seeding is misleading. The science backs her up. Cloud seeding cannot create clouds or conjure a weather system of this magnitude from thin air. At best, it can modestly enhance rainfall from a system that already exists, perhaps by 5 or 10%. The storm that hit Dubai was a monster, a massive, slow-moving low-pressure system that stretched across the entire Gulf region. The moisture it carried was immense. Blaming the flood on a few salt flares was like blaming an avalanche on a single snowflake. The real culprit was far more sinister. On May 24, 2024, Dr. Otto's team at the World Weather Attribution Initiative published its formal analysis. Their conclusion was clear. While the precise contribution of climate change is hard to quantify for such a rare event, the warming climate, caused by human greenhouse gas emissions, very likely made the rainfall 10 to 40% more intense. A warmer atmosphere holds more moisture, about 7% more for every degree Celsius of warming. So when a storm system does form, it has more fuel to work with, leading to more extreme downpours. The flood was not an accident of weather modification. It was a predictable, if extreme, consequence of a warming planet. And here is what made it so much worse. Dubai was a city designed with a fatal flaw. For decades, every planning decision, every architectural choice, every engineering project was optimized for a single threat: heat. The goal was to move heat out. The buildings were sealed and air-conditioned. The public spaces were covered. The transportation was climate-controlled. But no one had seriously planned for the opposite problem: how to move water away. The city was built on a foundation of blissful ignorance about the risk of extreme rain. It was a failure of imagination, a failure to understand that in the new era of climate change, the old rules no longer apply. Dry places will get wet. Stable climates will become chaotic. Future-proofing for one threat can leave you dangerously exposed to another. I know, I'm asking again. But seriously, about half of you watching right now aren't subscribed. If you've ever thought, that's interesting, while watching one of our videos, now's the time to make it official. The support is what allows us to spend the time needed to connect these dots. It really is that important. The aftermath of the flood exposed the fragility of the entire system. Supply chains broke down as trucks were unable to navigate flooded roads. Residents were trapped in high-rise apartments for days, some without power, as basement parking garages and entire neighborhoods remained submerged. The experience was a profound psychological shock for a city built on an image of perfect control and unwavering competence. The desert oasis had been violated. The response from the government was swift. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the ruler of Dubai and the visionary behind its transformation, approved a 2 billion dirham project, roughly $544 million, to overhaul the city's storm drainage network. Dubai municipality announced new building codes. It was an admission that the old model was broken. But it is a reactive measure in a race against an accelerating threat. The question is whether a new network of pipes can truly protect a city built on a floodplain from a climate that is becoming hotter, wetter, and weirder with each passing year. This leads to the deepest contradiction at the heart of the UAE story. The country is acutely aware of the danger. It was the first nation in the Middle East and North Africa to pledge to reach net zero emissions by 2050, a strategic initiative championed by the UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. The country's Minister of Climate Change and Environment, Mariam bint Mohammed Al Mheri, leads a ministry dedicated to achieving these goals. Abu Dhabi is home to Masdar City, a purpose-built sustainable city designed as a testbed for green urbanism, and also the headquarters of the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA. And then, in November of 2023, just months before the flood and after the hottest summer on record, Dubai hosted COP28, the United Nations Annual Climate Change Conference. The world gathered in Expo City, Dubai, to negotiate the future of the planet. And the man presiding over the conference was Dr. Sultan Ahmed Al Jaber, the UAE's Minister of Industry and Advanced Technology, and at the time also the CEO of the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, one of the largest oil and gas producers in the world. The paradox was not lost on anyone. A petrostate, and the CEO of its national oil company was leading the global charge to phase out fossil fuels. A city whose very existence depends on burning massive amounts of fossil fuels to run its AC and desalination plants was the stage for a climate summit. As MIT professor El Fatih El Tahir has noted, Dubai represents both the problem and potentially the solution. It has pushed the boundaries of what is possible, but also shown the costs of doing so. Okay, last time, I promise, probably. For this video, hitting subscribe is the fuel for this entire operation. Think of it as your vote for more investigations just like this one. It's the single most effective way to ensure we can keep making them. The ultimate question now hanging over Dubai is one of long-term viability. The April 2024 flood was a warning shot. The creeping, relentless rise of the wet bulb temperature is the existential threat. Studies published in journals like Science Advances and Nature Climate Change confirm that the Persian Gulf is a global hotspot for these unsurvivable heat and humidity combinations. Since 1979, the 35-degree wet bulb threshold has been briefly surpassed on at least 14 separate occasions in the region. These instances are becoming more frequent and lasting longer. Dr. Colin Raymond, a climate researcher at UCLA, has called the region a laboratory for an ongoing experiment in human adaptation. But in an experiment, failure is an option. What happens here when the power goes out during a week-long heat wave where the wet bulb temperature stays above the human survival limit? The air-conditioned bubbles would become tombs. The life support system would fail. The city's leadership is betting on technology. The Dubai Clean Energy Strategy 2050 aims to generate 75% of the city's power from clean sources by that year. Massive solar parks are being built in the desert. There is research into less energy-intensive desalination methods. But the scale of the challenge is monumental. It requires re-engineering the entire metabolism of a metropolis that was designed from the ground up to be energy-intensive. It is an attempt to retrofit a jet engine while it is still in flight. The story of Dubai is a story about the future of all our cities in a warming world. It is the story of a gamble that human ingenuity can always outrun the consequences of its own actions. A gamble that we can engineer our way out of a climate crisis. For decades, Dubai has been winning that gamble, creating a stunning oasis of prosperity in one of Earth's most hostile environments. But the climate is changing the odds. The heat is getting more extreme, the storms are getting more violent, and the life support machine is being pushed closer and closer to its breaking point. The government has approved billions to upgrade its drainage. In the heart of one of the driest places on Earth, a city of glass and steel rises from the sand. Here, emerald green golf courses drink deeply under a relentless sun. Fountains dance in sprawling shopping malls, and private swimming pools shimmer in the courtyards of luxurious villas. This is the United Arab Emirates, a nation that has bent the desert to its will. But this miracle of modern engineering is built on a paradox and sustained by a system so fragile it teeters on the edge of a knife. The UAE has one of the highest water consumption rates on the planet, with the average resident using around 500 liters per day, nearly triple the international average. But where does all this water come from in a country that receives less than 100 millimeters of rain a year? Think about that for a second. An entire modern metropolis, flourishing in hyper-aridity. What's your immediate guess on how they pull this off? Drop it in the comments below, because the real answer is more complex and far more precarious than you can imagine. An astonishing number of people who watch our deep dives into these critical global systems watch until the very end. But they forget one crucial step. To truly connect the dots on how our world works, you cannot afford to miss the next investigation. So please, right now, take 1 second and hit that subscribe button. It is genuinely an emergency for us as a small channel, and it's the only way to guarantee you won't miss the next piece of this global puzzle. It's more important than you think. Now, let's begin. To understand the nation's fragile present, we must look to its past. For centuries, life in this arid landscape was a masterclass in survival, dictated by the rare and precious appearance of water. Communities clung to oases, their existence anchored by the ancient ingenuity of the Falaj system. These were not mere ditches. They were marvels of engineering. Networks of underground channels, some stretching for kilometers, were painstakingly carved to tap into mountain aquifers and guide water using nothing but gravity. The afflegs were the arteries of the desert, delivering life to date palm groves and small settlements, sustaining a delicate balance between humanity and an unforgiving environment. Water was more than a resource. It was the organizing principle of society. Its flow was meticulously managed, its use governed by strict communal laws. Every drop was accounted for, every drop was sacred. This was a world defined by its limits. Then, in the middle of the 20th century, everything changed. The discovery of oil didn't just bring wealth, it unleashed a tidal wave of transformation that washed away the old world. The UAE's leaders, with vision and ambition, embarked on a project of nation building at a scale and speed never seen before. Skyscrapers pierced the sky, highways unspooled across the sand, and a population boom drew people from every corner of the globe. But this new glittering reality had a voracious thirst, a thirst that the ancient affledge and meager rainfall could never hope to quench. The dream of a modern nation would have died of dehydration before it even began, if not for a radical solution. They would make their own fresh water. They would drink the sea. This is the dawn of the age of desalination. The first large-scale plant was established in Abu Dhabi in 1960, a humble beginning to what would become a national obsession. Today, the UAE is a global titan of desalination. Over 70 major plants dot its coastline, humming technological behemoths that perform a modern alchemy. And it's a good thing they do, because a staggering 99% of the country's drinking water, the water that flows from the taps in Dubai's Burj Khalifa and Abu Dhabi's sprawling suburbs, is born in these facilities. It is manufactured water, wrested from the salty Arabian Gulf. To grasp the sheer scale of this operation, consider the Jebel Ali Desalination Complex in Dubai. Operated by the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority, or DEWA, it's one of the largest single-site power generation and water production hubs on the planet. For decades, it has been the beating heart of Dubai's water supply, a vast industrial city dedicated to keeping a desert metropolis alive. But even this giant is being overshadowed. What do you think is the biggest, most overlooked cost of turning an entire ocean into drinking water? It's not just the money. Share your thoughts in the comments. The reality is an environmental puzzle with no easy answers. Further down the coast, in Abu Dhabi, a new champion has entered the scene. The Taweelah Reverse Osmosis Plant, which came into full operation in 2023, is a statement of intent. Operated by the Abu Dhabi National Energy Company, TAQA, it is one of the largest and most efficient plants of its kind in the entire world. Every single day, Taweelah produces 200 million imperial gallons of fresh water. That's enough to fill over 360 Olympic-sized swimming pools every 24 hours. The technology here marks a critical shift. For years, the dominant method was thermal desalination, essentially boiling seawater on a massive scale and collecting the steam. It worked, but it was an energy glutton. Taweelah, on the other hand, uses reverse osmosis, or RO. This process uses immense pressure to force seawater through a series of sophisticated membranes. These membranes act like a microscopic filter, trapping the salt and other impurities, allowing only pure water molecules to pass through. The result is a process that TAQA states is 44% more energy efficient than the older thermal plants. This efficiency isn't just a bonus, it's a strategic necessity. Because the UAE's water lifeline is inextricably tied to another critical resource: energy. These desalination plants are power-hungry monsters. They are a significant reason why desalination accounts for an enormous portion of the UAE's total energy consumption, with estimates ranging from 10 to 25% of the entire country's power use, depending on the season. Most of this energy comes from burning natural gas. So the equation becomes terrifyingly simple. No gas, no power. No power, no water. Water security is energy security. This creates a colossal hidden cost for every green lawn and every dancing fountain. The very act of creating water contributes to the carbon emissions that are warming the planet, a feedback loop that is beginning to spiral out of control. If you're finding this deep dive into the hidden mechanics of a modern city valuable, do us a quick favor and hit that like button. And if you know someone who might be fascinated by this story, consider sharing it with your friends or family. These are the kinds of systems that affect us all, and understanding them is a step towards a smarter future. But the energy cost is only half of the story. For every liter of fresh water produced, there's a toxic leftover. This byproduct is called brine, a hot hypersaline sludge twice as salty as the ocean itself. And all of it, millions upon millions of gallons a day, is pumped right back into the Arabian Gulf. The Gulf is a relatively shallow, semi-enclosed sea with a slow circulation rate. It's already naturally salty due to high evaporation under the desert sun. Now, imagine dozens of industrial plants along its shores constantly injecting it with hot, concentrated salt. Scientists have confirmed what logic suggests. The Gulf is getting saltier. A 2019 study from NYU Abu Dhabi warned that increasing salinity could pose a serious threat to marine ecosystems. But it also creates another vicious cycle. As the source water becomes saltier, the desalination plants have to work harder, use more pressure, and consume more energy to produce the same amount of fresh water. The very solution to the water crisis is poisoning its own source, making the problem harder and more expensive to solve in the long run. It is a ticking clock, hidden beneath the waves. And now, a new and powerful adversary has entered the arena: extreme, record-shattering heat. Climate change isn't a future threat for the UAE. It is a present and escalating crisis. On July 16, 2023, a remote weather station in the country logged a temperature of 50.8 degrees Celsius. That's 123.4 degrees Fahrenheit. This wasn't a one-off event. The summer of 2023 was a brutal season of sustained heat waves, with urban temperatures routinely soaring past 48 degrees Celsius. This extreme heat pushes the UAE's fragile system to its breaking point. The immediate effect is a surge in water demand. People drink more, they use water for cooling, and the vast expanses of urban greenery require constant, heavy irrigation just to survive. Simultaneously, every air conditioner in the country is switched on, maxed out, and running 24/7. This causes a massive spike in electricity demand, straining the national power grid. And what powers the desalination plants that provide the water? That very same power grid. This is the dangerous feedback loop. Extreme heat increases demand for both water and power, while simultaneously putting the power grid, the source of all water, under extreme stress. A widespread power failure during a 50-degree heat wave isn't just an inconvenience. It's a national security threat. The taps would run dry at the very moment water is most desperately needed. Faced with this existential threat, the UAE is fighting back, not just with brute force engineering, but with futuristic technology that seems pulled from science fiction. For years, the National Center of Meteorology, or NCM, has been running one of the world's most active cloud seeding programs. On average, they conduct over 300 missions a year. The concept is simple. When weather patterns show clouds with the potential for rain, small planes are dispatched to fly into them and release salt flares. These salt particles act as cloud condensation nuclei, encouraging tiny water droplets within the cloud to coalesce, grow heavier, and hopefully fall as rain. Officials claim the method can enhance rainfall by 10 to 30% under ideal conditions. For a country with so little natural rain, any extra amount is a victory. It's an attempt to squeeze every last drop of moisture from the sky. But this technology came under intense scrutiny in April of 2024. Over a 24-hour period, the UAE was inundated by the heaviest rainfall ever recorded in its 75-year history. Dubai was paralyzed. The airport, one of the world's busiest, turned into a lake. Highways became rivers, and luxury cars were submerged. As the floodwaters rose, so did a widespread belief the government's cloud seeding had gone too far. They had played God and created a deluge. The narrative was simple, compelling, and it spread like wildfire online. But the truth, according to the NCM and independent meteorologists, was far more complex. The NCM was quick to state that while seeding flights had occurred in the days prior, they had not seeded the specific storm system that caused the flood. Experts like Dr. Mahmoud Ebrahim of the NCM clarified the science. You can't create a cloud. We enhance what is there. We cannot make a huge cloud appear from nothing. The deluge was caused by a massive, slow-moving, low-pressure system that had been forecast days in advance. The impact of any seeding would have been minuscule, a drop in a meteorological ocean. The April 2024. Floods were not a story of man-made rain, but a brutal lesson in urban vulnerability. It revealed that a city built to conquer drought was completely unprepared for a deluge. Its infrastructure, designed for a world with no rain, lacked the fundamental storm drainage needed to cope with a changing climate where extremes, both wet and dry, are the new normal. Okay, I'm going to interrupt for just a second. I know this might be the second time I'm saying this, but our analytics show that a huge number of you who love these deep explorations are still not subscribed. It takes us hundreds of hours to research and produce this for you, and all we ask in return is that one small free click. It's genuinely the most important thing you can do to support our work. So if you've gotten value so far, please pause for just 1 second and join the community. I promise, it's worth it. Now back to the story. The cloud seeding spectacle and the flooding disaster highlight a critical point. Technological fixes can have unintended consequences, and they are often no match for the raw power of nature. This reality has forced the UAE's leadership to think about worst-case scenarios. What happens if the Arabian Gulf becomes too saline? What if a geopolitical conflict disrupts shipping lanes, cutting off access to the seawater itself? What if a catastrophic technical failure or a deliberate attack knocks out multiple desalination plants at once? The answer lies buried deep beneath the sands of the Liwa Desert, a project of incredible foresight and scale. The Liwa Strategic Water Reserve. This is not a lake or a traditional reservoir. It is one of the world's largest man-made aquifers, a secret doomsday vault for water. For years, desalinated water was piped over 160 kilometers from the coast and slowly injected deep underground into a natural aquifer. The project, managed by the Environment Agency, Abu Dhabi created a massive underground stockpile of high-quality fresh water. It can hold up to 26 billion liters. That's 5.6 billion imperial gallons of desalinated water. This reserve is designed to be the nation's ultimate insurance policy. In the event of a national emergency that disrupts the coastal desalination plants, this underground bank can be tapped, providing the entire country with fresh water for up to 90 days. It is a silent, invisible guardian, a testament to the level of strategic planning required when your entire nation's existence depends on a single, vulnerable technology. The very existence of the Liwa Reserve is an admission of the profound fragility of the UAE's system. It's a multi-billion-dollar Plan B, built because they know just how easily Plan A could fail. This blend of high-tech solutions and paranoid contingency planning defines the UAE's national strategy. The country is in a constant, high-stakes arms race against its own environment. While the Liwa Reserve provides a buffer, it isn't a long-term solution. The core problems of high consumption and energy-intensive production remain. This is the focus of the UAE's Water Security Strategy 2036, a comprehensive roadmap for the future laid out by the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure, under Minister Suhail Al-Mazrouei. The strategy has ambitious goals. It aims to reduce the total demand for water by 21%, a major challenge in a culture where water use is so high. It plans to increase the reuse of treated wastewater to 95%, creating a circular economy for water where every drop is used and recycled to its maximum potential. And it seeks to reduce the nation's water scarcity index, a measure of its vulnerability. Achieving these goals requires a multi-pronged attack. On the supply side, the shift to more efficient reverse osmosis technology is accelerating. In Dubai, DEWA is already developing a new 180 million imperial gallon per day RO plant in Hassian, set to be completed by 2026. As CEO Saeed Mohammed Al Tayer has emphasized, the move away from old thermal plants is a core part of their sustainability effort. At the same time, the UAE is pioneering radical new ways to use the water it does have. The government knows that about 44% of the country's total water use is from groundwater, but over 90% of that groundwater is saline or brackish, making it useless for conventional farming. So, instead of trying to change the water, they are trying to change the plants. At the International Center for Biosaline Agriculture, or ICBA, in Dubai, scientists are at the forefront of this effort. They are researching and developing salt-tolerant crops, or halophytes like quinoa and salicornia. Salicornia, also known as sea asparagus, can thrive on water as salty as the ocean. The vision is to create a new kind of agriculture, biosaline agriculture, that can flourish using the UAE's vast reserves of brackish groundwater, drastically reducing the pressure on precious desalinated water that is so expensive to produce. It's about working with the desert, not just fighting against it. But even with all these innovations, more efficient plants, strategic reserves, saltwater farming, and attempts to make it rain, the fundamental challenge remains. Can technology outpace a climate that is becoming more extreme, faster than many models predicted? The high consumption rates are not just about agriculture. They are deeply embedded in the lifestyle that defines the modern UAE, the greening of its cities. A deliberate policy to create a more livable environment comes at an immense water cost. Every park, every tree-lined boulevard is a testament to the country's wealth, but also a drain on its most precious resource. Changing this will require more than just new technology. It will require a cultural shift, a return to the conservationist mindset that defined life in the region for centuries. The government is promoting awareness campaigns, urging residents to cut back on their usage. But changing habits is a slow and difficult process. Ultimately, the story of the UAE and its water is a microcosm of a global challenge. It is a story of human ingenuity pushing the boundaries of what is possible, creating an oasis of prosperity in an impossible place. But it is also a cautionary tale about the costs of that ambition. The reliance on energy-intensive technology creates vulnerabilities to global energy markets and geopolitical instability. The environmental fallout, like the increasing salinity of the Gulf, threatens to undermine the very system it supports. And the accelerating pace of climate change acts as a relentless stress test, constantly pushing the system closer to its limits. Charles Iceland, from the World Resources Institute, summarized the global dilemma perfectly when he said of desalination, "It's not a panacea." The UAE has built the most advanced, expensive, and sophisticated panacea in the world, and it is still not enough. The nation finds itself on a technological treadmill. It must run faster and faster, building bigger, more efficient plants just to stay in the same place as temperatures rise and demand grows. The dream of the desert oasis is real, but it is maintained by a constant roaring fire of burning gas, a complex network of humming pumps and pipes, and a brilliant, desperate strategy to hold back the inevitable scarcity of the natural world. The question facing the UAE is not whether its technology is impressive, but whether it can evolve fast enough to survive the future it helped create. The dazzling lights of Dubai and Abu Dhabi are powered by a miracle of engineering. But that miracle is shadowed by the ever-present threat that one day the pressure could drop, the pumps could fail, and the taps could run dry in the heart of the desert. And if you've watched this far, you are clearly someone who cares about understanding these complex global issues. We have one last, very quick request. If you haven't yet, please click that subscribe button. It's the single best way to ensure you join us for our next investigation, and it helps our community grow. Thank you for your incredible support. At 3 in the morning in Dubai, the temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. Not inside, under air conditioning. Outside, on streets made of asphalt and concrete that are still breathing the sun back into the air. This is not the heat of the day. This is the heat of the night. A fundamental law of the desert has been broken. For millennia, the logic of this landscape was simple, brutal sun, followed by profound cold. Sand does not hold the day, but a city of glass and steel does. The very fabric of modern Dubai has transformed it into a thermal battery, storing up the violence of the sun and releasing it long after sunset, erasing the single most important survival mechanism the desert ever offered. Relief. And here is the detail that tells the real story. In a landmark study of 100 global cities, published in November of 2025, a team of scientists found a critical blind spot in how we measure climate change. They discovered nighttime heat is rising dramatically faster than daytime highs. And in the specific conditions of a moist tropical environment, one city outpaced almost all others: Dubai. Its nights are warming at a rate of 1 degree Celsius every 8.81 years, a speed that is not just a statistic, it is an acceleration toward a physical limit. The strangest part of this story is not that a desert city is hot. It is what happens when the night no longer offers an escape, and the human body is subjected to a 24-hour siege of heat from which it can never recover. To understand what is happening in Dubai, you have to understand the two engines driving its heat. One is the city itself, the other is the sea it sits on. The first engine is a creation of ambition and concrete. Historically, the Arabian Peninsula was habitable because of sand's low specific heat capacity. It heats up fast under the sun and radiates that heat away just as quickly when the sun is gone. A Bedouin traveling at night would have felt a chill, a deep cold settling into the dunes. That cycle is the foundation of life in the desert. Dubai has inverted the cycle. Its built environment, the endless towers, the sprawling road networks, the sheer density of its urban core, acts as a colossal heat sink,
Concrete and asphalt absorb solar radiation all day, far more efficiently than sand ever could. But unlike sand, they release it slowly, grudgingly, throughout the night. Studies have measured the effect with unnerving precision. The urban core of Dubai is on average 3.3 degrees Celsius warmer at night than the undeveloped desert that surrounds it. That is the average. In specific microclimates, between canyons of skyscrapers or above sprawling blacktop parking lots, the nocturnal temperature difference can reach a staggering 7 degrees. The city has become its own furnace. Millions of air conditioning units, the very technology that makes life here possible, compound the problem. Each one pumps hot exhaust air out into the streets, fighting the interior heat by adding to the exterior heat. It is a vicious feedback loop, an oasis that poisons its own immediate surroundings. And every year, with every new tower, that furnace burns hotter. This is the part the headlines do not capture. The second engine is the Persian Gulf. Dubai is not Riyadh. It is not a city of dry inland desert heat. It sits on the coast of one of the warmest, shallowest seas on the planet. And in the summer, as the water temperature rises, it pumps incomprehensible volumes of moisture into the air. This combination of extreme heat from the urban island and extreme humidity from the Gulf creates a condition measured by a metric far more important than simple temperature. It is called the wet bulb temperature. Now, here is the part nobody is putting on the news. Your body cools itself by sweating. The evaporation of that sweat from your skin is what draws heat away. But that process has a limit. It only works if the surrounding air is dry enough to accept the moisture. When the wet bulb temperature reaches 35 degrees Celsius, or 95 degrees Fahrenheit, the air around you is so saturated with both heat and humidity that your sweat can no longer evaporate. It just drips off. The body's primary cooling mechanism fails completely. At that point, it does not matter if you are in the shade. It does not matter if you have water to drink. Your core temperature begins to rise uncontrollably. The environment is no longer drawing heat from you. You are drawing heat from it. Hyperthermia is inevitable. Within 6 hours, it is lethal. On October 26, 2015, two scientists, Professor El-Fatih El-Tahir of MIT and Professor Jeremy Powell of Loyola Marymount University, published a study in Nature Climate Change. Using high-resolution climate models, they made a dire prediction. Under the world's current trajectory of carbon emissions, the region around the Persian Gulf would begin to exceed that 35-degree wet bulb threshold by the end of the century. They described it as a specific regional hotspot where climate change would severely impact human habitability. The report made a wave of headlines. Then, the world mostly moved on. But the models were not wrong. They may have been too conservative. The future they predicted for 2100 is beginning to arrive now. Zoom out, and the data shows an undeniable acceleration. Larry Kalkstein, the chief heat science advisor at Climate Resilience for All, was the lead author of that 2025 study that identified Dubai's rapid nighttime warming. He called it a critical gap in our understanding. Before this analysis, he stated, "We did not know how rapidly nighttime heat has been rising within the most dangerous air masses. The danger is not just the peak heat of the afternoon. It is the absence of cooling at night. For the millions of outdoor laborers who build and maintain the city, this is a slow-motion crisis. The UAE government mandates a midday work ban during the hottest part of the summer, from 12:30 p.m. to 3 p.m., between June 15 and September 15. It is a necessary protection, but it assumes that workers can recover from the day's heat stress during the cooler hours of the night. That assumption is collapsing. When nighttime temperatures remain above 30 degrees and sometimes push past 37 degrees, the human body never fully enters a recovery phase. The cardiovascular system remains under constant strain. The risk of heat exhaustion and heat stroke doesn't reset to zero at sundown. It accumulates. Day after day. week after week. The city's relentless nocturnal heat becomes a chronic condition, a physiological debt that can never be repaid. The empty outdoor tourist spaces across Dubai in the summer tell their own silent story. The promenades, the waterfronts, the meticulously landscaped plazas, all designed for human enjoyment, sit deserted long after the sun goes down, radiating heat into an atmosphere that cannot carry it away. They are beautiful. And they are hostile. Then came the warning shot. The moment a statistical trend became an emergency. On May 23, 2025, the United Arab Emirates recorded its highest May temperature in history, 54 degrees Celsius. It was an astonishing figure for a month that is still technically pre-summer. But the real shock came just 24 hours later. On May 24, in an inland town called Swaihan, about 97 kilometers from the coast, the temperature gauges hit 51.6 degrees Celsius, 124.9 degrees Fahrenheit. It was a new national record for May, broken for the second consecutive day. The numbers were carried by news agencies around the world. But here is the detail that tells the real story. May 24 falls 3 weeks before the government's mandatory midday work ban kicks in on June 15. For 3 weeks, as the pre-summer heat shattered all-time records. The legal protections for outdoor workers did not exist. The climate had shifted faster than the policy designed to contain it. The event in Swaihan was not just a heat wave. It was a failure of the calendar. A signal that the established rhythms of the seasons, the very framework that has governed life in this region for centuries, are no longer reliable. The heat is arriving earlier, and it is more extreme than the system is prepared to handle. This collision of old calendars and new realities is most apparent today. July 3rd, 2026. According to Ibrahim Al-Jarwan, the chairman of the Emirates Astronomy Society, today marks the official start of Jamrat al-Kaith. The name translates to the embers of summer. It is a 40-day period, ending on August 10, that has been traditionally known for millennia as the absolute hottest, driest part of the year. A time when inland temperatures were expected to push past 45 degrees Celsius, and the dry Samum winds would blow from the desert. It was the peak, the summit of the year's heat, a period to be endured before the slow descent into autumn. But the 51.6-degree record was not set during Jamrat al-Kaith. It was set in May. The peak is no longer the peak. The entire baseline has shifted. On July 17th, 2024, at 3 in the afternoon, the instruments at Dubai International Airport recorded an air temperature of 109 degrees Fahrenheit. But combined with a dew point of 85 degrees, the heat index, the feels-like temperature, was almost unbelievable. 62.2 degrees Celsius, 144 degrees Fahrenheit. These are numbers that approach the upper limits of what human physiology can withstand, even for a short time. And they are happening in a city whose nights are now warming faster than almost anywhere else on Earth. The escape valve is gone. The implications ripple outward from the individual to the infrastructure. A city that requires constant 24-hour air conditioning becomes a fortress of cooled interiors, besieged by its own unlivable exterior. The energy demands are astronomical. The strain on the power grid during a prolonged heat wave becomes a critical point of failure. The water needed for desalination plants, which provide the city's fresh water, is sourced from the same warming gulf that is driving the lethal humidity. Everything is connected. And everything is under a new kind of pressure. Professor El Tahir's 2015 study was a work of scientific prophecy. He wrote, "Our results expose a specific regional hotspot where climate change, in the absence of significant, is likely to severely impact human habitability in the future. That future is no longer a distant abstraction. It is the 3 AM weather report. It is the labor policy that has been outpaced by reality. It is the shimmering, empty plaza at midnight that should be full of life, but is instead just an extension of the day's suffocating heat. The progress that built Dubai, the monumental engineering of its skyscrapers and artificial islands, was a demonstration of humanity's power to reshape the desert to its will. But that very act of reshaping has set in motion a powerful and unintended consequence. The materials of the modern world, the concrete and the asphalt, have created a new kind of desert, one that does not cool down. The numbers themselves are stark, but they do not fully capture the profound shift. The UAE's official all-time modern high temperature stands at 52 degrees Celsius, recorded on Al Yasat Island in 2010. For years, that number was the benchmark, the absolute ceiling. But the May 2025 event in Swaihan came within 0.4 degrees of breaking it, a month before the traditional summer peak even began. It suggests the old ceiling is becoming the new floor. We are watching a place on Earth approach a series of physical thresholds. The physiological threshold of the human body, defined by that 35-degree wet bulb limit. The infrastructural threshold of a power grid and water system under perpetual maximum strain. And a social threshold, where the promise of a hypermodern city collides with an environment that is actively hostile to human presence. The question is no longer if these thresholds will be crossed. It is how soon and how often. The science of the urban heat island is not new, but Dubai presents an extreme case study, a perfect storm of contributing factors. The sheer verticality of the buildings creates urban canyons that trap hot air and prevent it from circulating. The dark surfaces of roads and rooftops have a low albedo, meaning they absorb a huge percentage of incoming solar radiation instead of reflecting it. The geographical location, inside the hot box of the Persian Gulf, provides the moisture that makes the heat so much more dangerous. Each element amplifies the others. The city's design, its location, and the background warming of the planet are all pushing in the same direction. And then there is the existential question buried in the data from the Climate Resilience for All study. If a city's nights are warming at 1 degree Celsius every 8.81 years, what does that city feel like in 10 years? In 20? The rate of change is what is so alarming. It is not a slow geological process. It is happening within the span of a single generation. A child born in Dubai today will experience a fundamentally different and more dangerous climate by the time they are an adult. The historic patterns that define this land for centuries have been broken in a matter of decades. The official response from the UAE's National Center of Meteorology is one of careful monitoring and advanced forecasting. They are among the world's leaders in weather science. But forecasting a crisis is not the same as preventing it. You can warn people about a 62-degree heat index, but you cannot change the physics that create it. The adaptation strategies, more powerful air conditioning, more indoor spaces, more resilient infrastructure, are a race against an accelerating problem. It is an attempt to solve a problem of excess heat by generating even more heat as a byproduct. So 3 questions hang over the glittering skyline of Dubai tonight, as the heat continues to radiate from the concrete long after midnight. How long can a society function when the very air outside becomes a threat, not just during the day, but around the clock? What does it mean for the future of urban life when a city's own success, its own growth in material substance, becomes the primary engine of its potential uninhabitability? And as the numbers from the thermometers and weather stations continue to climb. Are we just watching the future of all coastal cities in a warming world, only on a faster, more urgent timeline? The heat captured by Dubai's towers yesterday is right now bleeding out into the humid air over the city. It is a slow, silent, relentless process. A transfer of energy that is invisible to the eye but can be felt on the skin. The city is not resting. It is preparing for the next sunrise, its concrete core already saturated with warmth. The desert night, the ancient promise of a cool reprieve, is gone, and in its place is just the lingering, suffocating heat of the day that never ended. To fully grasp the scale of this transformation, you must consider the sheer mass involved. The weight of concrete, steel, and asphalt in the Dubai metropolitan area is measured in the hundreds of millions of tons. Each ton is a small piece of the thermal battery. Where there was once sand, which would be cool to the touch by midnight, there is now a man-made geology that retains energy with brutal efficiency. This is not just a weather phenomenon, it is a geological one. A new stratum laid upon the earth, with new thermal laws. The physiological impact of this endless heat deserves a closer look. When the body cannot cool, a cascade of failures begins. It starts with heat exhaustion, dizziness, nausea, extreme thirst. If the exposure continues, it progresses to heat stroke, the body's internal thermostat in the brain, the hypothalamus, becomes overwhelmed and fails. Core temperature can spike to 40 degrees Celsius 104 F or higher. Proteins and enzymes in the body begin to denature, effectively cooking from the inside. This leads to cell death, organ failure, particularly in the kidneys, liver, and brain, and ultimately, death. The 35-degree wet bulb threshold is not a theoretical danger. It is a biological boundary. The work of Professor El-Tahir and Professor Powell was not a climate model. It was a mortality model. One might think that the local population, having lived in a hot climate for generations, would have some inherent adaptation. But there is no human adaptation for a wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees. It is a hard limit imposed by physics and biology. Furthermore, the modern population of Dubai is largely composed of expatriates from cooler climates, and the outdoor labor force is drawn almost entirely from countries like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Nepal. While they come from hot regions, they are often not acclimatized to the unique combination of extreme heat and extreme humidity found on the Gulf Coast, let alone the added burden of the urban heat island. The work of Ibrahim Al-Jarwan and the Emirates Astronomy Society highlights a cultural and historical dissonance. The traditional calendar of the region was not just folklore, it was a survival guide, honed over centuries of observation. It told people when to plant, when to travel, when to expect the harsh Samum winds, and when to celebrate the relief of cooler weather. That oral and written tradition provided a predictable framework for life. The May 2025 heatwave demonstrated that this inherited knowledge is becoming obsolete. The embers of summer, a known and respected enemy, has broken its temporal boundaries. It's like finding a chapter from August torn out and pasted into the middle of May. The entire narrative of the year is being scrambled. Let's return to the mechanics of the city itself. Consider a single skyscraper. During the day, its glass facade reflects some sunlight, but it also allows a tremendous amount of solar radiation to pass through, heating the interior. The building's vac system then works furiously to pump that heat out, venting it into the surrounding streets. The concrete structure itself absorbs direct solar energy. At night, the process reverses. The building, now warmer than the cooling air, begins to radiate its stored heat outward. Multiply this effect by thousands of buildings, and you have the urban heat island. The very symbol of Dubai's modernity, the skyscraper, becomes an active participant in making the city's climate more extreme. We can track the water that disappeared into the sinkhole in the reference story about Florida. It moved at 0.87 kilometers a day, on a measurable path. But how do we track this heat? It does not flow in one direction. It is a state of being. It saturates the atmosphere. It radiates from every surface. On July 17th, 2024, when the heat index hit 62, 2 degrees Celsius, that wasn't a freak gust of wind. It was a property of the entire air mass smothering the city, a combination of heat and moisture so profound that it changed the very nature of the air itself. The policy lag is one of the most critical and under-discussed aspects of this crisis. Government regulations, by their nature, are reactive. They are based on historical data and established norms. The UAE's midday work ban, running from June 15 to September 15, was a progressive and life-saving policy when it was conceived. It was based on decades of data that showed this period was the consistent, predictable peak of summer heat. But climate change does not respect bureaucratic timelines. The 51 6-degree record in May proves that the danger zone has expanded, and as of now, the policy has not caught up. This creates a new window of vulnerability for the city's most exposed population. It is also vital to understand the structure of the Persian Gulf itself. It is a very shallow body of water, with an average depth of only 50 meters. Shallow water heats up much faster than the deep ocean. During the summer, surface temperatures in the Gulf can exceed 35 degrees Celsius 95 F. This turns the entire sea into a massive, warm bath, maximizing the amount of water that evaporates into the already hot air. Its high salinity also affects the evaporation rate. This giant natural humidity generator is right on Dubai's doorstep. The city's own man-made heat engine is then supercharged by this natural moisture engine, a devastatingly effective partnership. The contrast with the ancient desert is the poetic core of this story. Imagine standing in the deep desert, miles from any city, at 3 a.m. The air would be clear and cold. The sand beneath your feet would feel cool, having shed all of the previous day's heat. You could look up and see the stars with perfect clarity. Now, stand on a street in downtown Dubai at the same time. The air is thick, hazy, and hot. The concrete beneath your feet is still warm to the touch. The hum of a million compressors fills the air. The stars are washed out by the city's glow and the atmosphere's haze. In just a few decades, one environment has been utterly replaced by its opposite. A place of nocturnal release has become a place of nocturnal confinement. What is the endgame? Some experts talk of large-scale geoengineering solutions, reflective coatings for buildings and roads to increase the city's albedo, massive greening projects to create cooling through evapotranspiration. But these are enormous, expensive undertakings, and they may be no match for the scale of the heat being generated and trapped. The other path is one of retreat, a future where the city's outdoor life effectively ceases to exist for half the year, and life becomes a migration between air-conditioned boxes, home, car, and office. A hermetically sealed existence. The data from the Cross study is a final chilling piece of the puzzle. The fact that nighttime heat is rising 10 times faster than daytime heat under certain conditions is a paradigm shift. For decades, climate discussions have focused on the peak daytime high, but the true measure of habitability may be the nocturnal low. It is the minimum temperature, not the maximum, that determines whether a biological system, a plant, an animal, a human being, can recover from thermal stress. In Dubai, that minimum is rising relentlessly. The slow, invisible movement of the water in the Florida aquifer has a destination, Wakula Spring. But the heat accumulating in Dubai has no single destination. It is simply there. It is the new state of the system. The heat from last week is layered into the heat from yesterday, and it will be compounded by the heat of tomorrow. The city's memory is no longer in its historical archives, but in the thermal energy stored in its very foundations, waiting to be released into the night.